Welcome to Dabo Recap. Enjoy your viewing. Subscribe. Night. The bright moon illuminates the entrance to the building, opposite a barrel on which several pitch-black crows sit. An abandoned building is strewn inside with various garbage, and the main character is surrounded by 4 unknown people. Unknown people report that someone has offered a huge reward for his head. The main character places the cold corpse of a girl on the ground, who is actually his sister. He threatens them with violence, throwing a piercing, ferocious look at them like that of a hungry tiger. There is loud laughter, and a man with white hair, wearing a cloak and his arms are covered with strange tattoos. He reproaches the main character for unnecessary chatter. In the next second, a strike as swift as lightning, aimed at the face of the ill-wisher, reaches its target. Those remaining opened their mouths in surprise and watched as the speaker's body flew into the wall behind. The main character glances at the remaining mercenaries on their feet. In a moment, 3 people will attack him at once using their strongest abilities while he stands still and does not move. The main character uses the release of his true QE, a blindingly bright force throwing everyone in different directions. Under the pressure of incredible force, the building shatters into small concrete pieces, as if an explosion of enormous proportions had occurred inside. All the killers scattered in different directions and breathed their last breath. Their clothes were torn and their bodies suffered enormous damage. An unexpected shock. The main character realizes that he has abused the use of his power, and now everything will turn against him. Experiencing pain piercing throughout his body, he does not know what to do. Taking one last look at his sister's body, his eyes close and his soul leaves the body. The galaxy, the stars, the endless universe, an array that flies through its expanses at incredible speed. It circles around many planets and heads towards a bright blue star, descending through different layers of the atmosphere, piercing the clouds, getting closer and closer to the ground. He rushes through the mountains to the country of BURSTS, located among them. Suddenly, a voice was heard begging them to wake up and say at least a few words. Opening his eyes, he found that he was in a room unknown to himself. In this life, his name would be Wu Shuang. The girl sitting opposite immediately hugs Wu Shuang and says how much she was worried that he wouldn't wake up again. He in turn doesn't understand anything, looks at the girl with surprised eyes. The main one in bewilderment examines her, the surroundings, his hands, and is surprised that they are small, like a child's. Looking out the open window located next to the bed, he sees houses, mountains, a landscape completely unknown to him. Suddenly he remembers his sister, her body lying on the cold ground. With questions about where she is, he pushes away the girl opposite. The same one says that she is his sister and with a surprised look asks what's wrong with him and why he doesn't recognize her. Looking at her surprised face, he mentally evaluates her age and appearance, realizing that she is very similar to his deceased sister. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he, not paying attention to his new sister, begins to wonder why he is still alive. Noticing the mirror, he very quickly runs up to it. In the reflection, he sees a small beaten child. Suddenly, a lightning-fast pain pierces him, clutching his head. Wu Shuang does not understand what is happening. Unknown memories, a home, an impoverished family, a father and sister came flooding back to him. He remembers the Wutong Academy, where he studies, and where the children of the nobility constantly humiliate him. In the last flashback, he accepts a challenge from his peer, Xian Zhang. During a fight that would more appropriately be called a one-sided beating, he is beaten to death. Having come to his senses, he hears his sister wondering what's wrong with him, but the main character pretends that everything is fine, transferring his vision to the sore wound. Realizing that this is his new life, that now he has a family, he asks his sister where their father went. But his sister does not want to tell him the truth. Questioning her sister more and more, she invites him not to think about it, but rather to take better care of himself, because the future of the family lies with him. Wu Shuang continues to ask his sister for an honest answer to his question, but he cannot get a concrete answer. In his heart, he already understood where his father was going, so after telling his sister that he needs to be stopped, he sends her to catch up and stop his father from a rash act. The street is filled with people with shocked faces. Everyone makes way to see an evil man with a spear in his hand who emits a red aura, his eyes filled with a thirst for revenge. He goes straight to the goal, not paying attention to the environment around him, when suddenly his daughter catches up with him, who was calling him from across the street. Surprised, he asks why she is not at home, but she, in turn with tears in her eyes, reports that her brother is alive, that he has finally woken up. Hearing these words, the man immediately begins to run through the crowded street in the direction of the house, because his son is alive. At this time, Wu Shuang looked at himself in the mirror and already accepted the fact that he had been reborn, and a completely new life awaited him. A moment later, his father crosses the threshold into the room, his face full of surprise and joy at the same time. The main character considers his father, Qinglian Shan, a tall man with a beard and long red hair. The big hand that fell on his head brought him completely new sensations of fatherly love, which he had never experienced in his previous life. The father, wondering who dared to beat him so badly, says that to restore justice, the only thing that needs to be done is to confirm the identity of the offender. After some thought, he invites his father to forget everything and leave it in the past, because the main thing is to look forward. He gives Wu Shuang a surprised look, wondering what happened to his son. Why is a child who was always alone and could not sit in one place so calm in such a situation? With an absolutely calm look, the main character begins to tell his father that it's still impossible to forget hatred. But if you rely only on a feeling of revenge, you won't be able to pull your family out of poverty. Having completely agreed with his son, Lian Shan invites him to quit the academy, and from the next day promises to teach him the ancient martial art. Relying on the glory, power, and wealth of his ancestors, he is confident that hereditary martial techniques will not help him reach the pinnacle of true martial arts. By this time, his sister had returned home, and immediately began to support that the academy was not the best place for him. But Wu Shuang suggests that they should not rush into a decision. After reflection, the main character assures his father and sister that he will no longer allow anyone to mock the once great Qing family. He understands that his words may scare them because the past Wu Shuang would never have said such words. A moment later he yawns, saying that he is tired, and his father sends him to rest, saying that they will discuss the rest as soon as he gets better. Fast forward to the night. The main character lies on an unremarkable bed and cannot leave his thoughts. Why does the Zhang family feel anger towards Qing? Why is there such devastation in his family? From the memory of the owner of the body, he comes to the conclusion that one of the reasons is the family assessment carried out every 4 years. Without an heir, the Qing family will be cut off, which will lead to the loss of a place in the family assessment, and therefore there will be no place among the nobility. Once they lost this place, everything that belonged to the Qing would be divided among the remaining families. Along with the economy, the social status of the family will also increase, which will be even worse, because in the world there is an impenetrable gulf between the nobility and the common people. The main character is sure that the whole fight was specially staged, that it was all part of some kind of conspiracy. The next day, the news that Wu Shuang had risen spread throughout the city, knowing everyone, even the nobles and elders. A month later, on the training ground, the main character has fully recovered from his injuries. While training, he remembers his past life, how strong he was, his nickname, and also expresses the shortcoming of Wu Shuang's past. He had never practiced powerful techniques. In his past life, on the contrary, he learned only the best first-class techniques. Each book was a legendary masterpiece. Taking a confident stance, he firmly decided that in this life he would correct all the regrets of the past. Light footsteps were heard from behind. It was the sister heading towards Wu Shuang with a worried look. She brought the news that Mr. Jin Bui and the academy had come, and together with Dad was waiting for him in the pavilion. Inquiring why he came, she assumed that he wanted to offer condolences after the incident at the academy. Lost in thought, he remembers how Jin Buki silently watched Qing Wu Shuang's fight with Xian Zhang. Watching everything from the balcony, a disgusting smile stood out on his face, which meant that he took the side of the Zhang family. When the father and sister came in a hurry to the academy, people stood in front of them, smiling sarcastically. In their hands, they held a stretcher on which Wu Shuang's body was located. Returning to reality, he resolutely headed straight to meet the welcome guests. Approaching the pavilion, he made a promise to himself that from that very moment, he would begin to restore his family. There were 3 figures in the TV pavilion at that moment. As soon as he crossed the threshold, Jin Bui immediately inquired about the wounds of the protagonist. When our hero arrived at the pavilion, there were a total of 4 people inside. Wu Shuang's father was sitting on a chair opposite the entrance. Another person was sitting next to him. The remaining 2 surrounded him on either side. One of those standing was the dean already known to us. I propose to meet 2 new characters. The first will be a fat man with a goatee and a sparkling bald head. He is a lobbyist, and his name is Gu Shen. The second character looks younger. He has the sophisticated look of a rich aristocrat, and his clothes are clearly not cheap. We are told that he is an influential person, and his name is Xu Sihai. Wu Shuang directed his judgmental gaze at Dean Jin Bui. He mentally expresses his opinion and that he has no right to be called a good person. He remembers how Qing Wu Shuang was beaten, and this arrogant degenerate simply ignored what was happening, watching from the sidelines. The main character is interested in why he came here, and in addition he pretends to be a good man. With full confidence, spreading his arms, our hero begins to thank the dean, saying that the wounds have already recovered and he has nothing to worry about. Not understanding what happened to the boy, Jin Bui, with a grin on his face, is completely sure that even if he is at home, he will not be able to stand up to him. Here our hero's father enters into the conversation, noting that such people would not have come without a reason, so he wonders why they came after all. Gu Shen steps forward and with an unpleasant smile says that he has come to give the head of Qing some valuable advice. He begins the conversation by mentioning the quadrennial family assessment, also touching on the plight of their family. Frowning, Chief Ching asks what the guest is getting at. An increasingly mocking look appears on his face, and he says that the head must realize what will happen to his family if they lose their place. But he is sure that he does not know what will happen after. With his hands spread, he confidently declares that he knows a way out of this situation, but is not sure whether the head of Qing wants to hear it. At this moment, Wu Shuang enters the conversation and says that he wants to hear the fat man's idea, and if she can really help the family, then they will generously thank him. Pointing his hand at the sitting gentleman, he introduces him. Shu Sihai is the younger brother of the head of the wealthy Shu family, and he came to our hero's family as a representative from Shu, and he has one promise. What is the essence of the promise? It's simple. If the Qing family gives up a place among the nobility after 4 years, then his family can guarantee your safety. Such a statement angered the head of Qing, and he clarified whether Gu Shen was confident in his words, and that his family would definitely be defeated in 4 years. Gu Shen, disrespectfully calling the head of the family brother, begins to put pressure on him, mentioning the poverty of his family. Also mentions that over the past 20 years, many ruling forces have changed in Luojiang province, and finally, completely belittling the reputation of the Qin family. He compares it with the owner of a herbal store, that he even has more connections. Containing his anger, the head of Qing says that the sacred land of Zhenwu is in charge of everything, and the people responsible for everything are appointed by the deputy emperor. Gu Shen objects to Lian Shan's words, saying that the emperor does not have time to bother with such a small province. Besides, the world is the survival of the fittest, and no one cares about the methods you will use. The head of Qing could not contain his anger, and shouted to clarify whether he understood correctly that they had come only to block the road for his family. The fat man confidently says that Qing will leave his place no matter what happens, and at the end he adds that it is not yet known whether his family can hold out for another 4 years. The head of the Qing mentions that although their bloodline has experienced decline, it has not fallen so low that others do with it whatever they want. In his words, he is ready to survive both robbery and insult. Shu Sihai looked at Lian Shan with displeasure and asked whether his words meant that he would prefer to die with honor instead of choosing a despicable life. The angry head said that the ancestors established the rule that any pest must be destroyed without exception. Rising from his chair and waving his hand, he told his daughter to escort the guests. Angered by this attitude, Gu Shen began to assure that since Lian Shan did not mean well, as soon as his family was thrown into the street, he would be the first to throw a stone at him. Wu Shuang intervenes again in the conversation and immediately compares Gu Shen to a dog that barks at people. He in turn says that there is no difference between the son and the father, and both of them will soon regret it. Shu Sihai, getting up from his seat, says that there is no longer anything to be here, since the head of Qing will not back down from his position. While he was leaving, Jin Bui also decided to say a few final words. He, referring to the healed wounds of our hero, insists on his return to the academy, because there are no noble children who would not want to study at the Wutong Academy. Wu Shuang, fully agreeing with the words of the dean, confidently promises to return to the academy. Jin Bui reminded him that no matter what happens, he must be focused on his studies. Making a sarcastic joke, our hero says to the back of the departing guests that he will not see them off. As soon as the unwanted guests left, the father decided to clarify whether his son really wanted to return to the academy. He immediately received a positive answer. The main character, saying that the trio was not just determined to return to the academy because it is a matter of honor, and remembering the fight, he is sure that it was all a conspiracy, and not against him specifically, but against the whole family. Realizing that he will not be able to convince his son, he says that hundreds of years ago the Qing were one of the richest families, and in the entire province of Luojiang, only a couple of people dared to raise their voices in their presence. Wu Shuang, in response to a short story about the past, decides to express his thoughts. He knows that the survival of the Qing family depends only on him and his father, and he is determined to lead his family to unprecedented heights. Lian Shan decides to support his son, and also warns him that once he gets back to the academy, he will have to endure all the difficulties without letting himself be led into a trap. Wu Shuang assures his father that he now understands what to do and what not to do. After a conversation with his father, our hero was in no hurry to return to the academy. Instead, he decided to devote a month to his training, and here we see him sitting on a large stump in the lotus position, and bright energy gathers between his hands. Lost in his thoughts, he begins to ponder which technique he should cultivate first, and based on the experience of his past life, he decides to choose the King Kong Fist as his main attack technique. Next comes our hero's discussion of the stages of strength. In the past world, there were no boundaries of qualification for internal and external cultivation, but in this only external strength is trained in order to reach those boundaries of heights that the body allows. From external to internal, one can create strength within and enter the stage of cultivating internal strength. The outer stages of this world are called the power strength stage, and after completing it completely, you can enter the stages called true might. Each stage is divided into 9 levels. By the way, our hero in a past life went through both stages of cultivation, and by the standards of this world, his strength was equal to the peak of the true power of the 9th level, and perhaps even slightly exceeded it. After a month of active training, Wu Shuang was able to reach the 7th level of power strength. He is confident that if he continues at the same pace, he will be able to break through all levels of power strength and enter the stage of true strength, with his plans to regain at least 80% of his previous strength before the family evaluation begins. Deciding to test his strength, he hits the tree using all of it at once, and this blow easily penetrates the thick trunk. Returning home, he notices his sister, who sitting at a table in the yard looks rather upset. Coming closer to her, he asks in surprise what happened and why she looks so sad. Getting up, the girl, trying to avoid answering, asks what her brother practiced today, but our hero will not accept this, because he has already realized that something is bothering his sister. Looking into her eyes, he says that she will tell him everything without hiding anything if she considers him a brother. Little manipulator. She begins to tell her that yesterday, some bean came to see her from the farmland estate and let her know that they had a long conversation. But this morning, his body was found at the front door. Surprised, Wu Shuang wonders how this could even happen. With a frightened face, she says that this is all a demon tormenting her for 6 years now. Tears began to appear in her eyes. Surprised, Wu Shuang decides to ask again if it's really a demon and what it even means. It turns out that all this started when his sister was 12. The demon said that he liked her, and in exactly 10 years he would take her. He also scared his father that he would not allow her to marry, and Wu Shuang was not told anything due to his hot temper. For 6 years, absolutely all the guys who communicated with her either died or disappeared. His sister became a real Death Star. Understanding that strange demon will come for his sister in 4 years, he has even more reasons to become stronger, telling his sister not to worry and to live for the next 4 years because he can protect her. Remembering the tragedy of his past life, how his sister died, he is simply obliged to protect her in this one. Here our hero finally stands confidently in front of the entrance to Wutong Academy. Smiling and looking towards the huge entrance arch, he confidently takes a step inside. Entering the academy's courtyard, a whole non-stop crowd immediately gathered around him. Everyone recognized him, and everyone was also surprised that, according to them, having returned to his insignificant life, he decided to return to the academy instead of hiding at home. Who even assumed that since he was not dead, he became even dumber after that beating. Xianzhang and Shu Ting were also present in the crowd. The former expressed his opinion that since Wu Shuang dared to return, then he did not take them seriously. Our hero, not paying attention to the words of the crowd, simply glances at everyone, perceiving them as nothing more than a bunch of brats. But then the dean of the academy stands in the way. Supposedly glad of his return, looking at him dissatisfied, the main character is sure that Jin Buyi has many plans to ruin his life at the academy. The dean approaches and asks whether his head injury has healed, but Wu Shuang sharply replies that the dean should remove the interfering objects from his mouth if he wants to say something. Having missed such a harsh response, Jin Buyi says that after that unpleasant incident there were minor negative consequences, and he hopes that in the future our hero will be more restrained. Smiling contemptuously, he asks whether he thinks he is wrong, saying that the dean is right. Wu Shuang begins a monologue that if he is bullied, he must endure it, and if they want to rob the lands, he will be obliged to give up all resources, production, and trade. Raising a dissatisfied look at him, he asked whether he understood everything correctly from the words of the respected dean. Looking at the main character in surprise, Jin Buyi wondered when that kid managed to become so sharp-tongued. He warned Wu Shuang not to cause problems, otherwise he would be brought before the law. At this moment, our hero objected and said that it was the dean who invited him to return to the academy, and also asked how he could deal with him. The nasty old man answered this question. That will expel him and drive him away. Turning around, Wu Shuang, saying that he would remember the dean's words, simply left. Next we see him in front of the door to his room. Opening the door, he didn't see anything special there. It was a simple, unremarkable room. While he was looking around behind him, someone called him, asking why he had returned. It was Wu Shuang's neighbor, Hu Pinyin. His comrade asked why our hero returned to the Wutong Academy, and whether he knew that Xianzhang was targeting him, to which he replied that he knew everything. Continuing to say that he shouldn't have returned, he didn't stop talking, but our hero interrupted him, saying that if he came to warn him about this, wouldn't he also become their target? Pinyin, citing the fact that they grew up together in the same city. He does not want to see how he will be humiliated. Thinking that he didn't want to involve anyone, Wu Shuang asked Pinyin not to come to him unless it was something important, because he could handle the rest himself. Not understanding what happened to his friend, the boy left the room. Already at night, our hero decided to start cultivating while sitting on the roof of a building opposite his room. He was attracted by two silhouettes that were rustling something near his room. Having gone down to eavesdrop on their conversation from a closer distance, he heard the two strangers about to throw in what they received from Mr. Shu before he returned to the room. As soon as the unknown people left Wu Shuang's room, he immediately decides to go check what they left there. Entering the room, his attention was drawn to a ribbon sticking out between the closet door. Opening it, he found what the recent pests had left behind, and mentioned that since Shu Ting likes to play dirty, he will not be left out. In the midst of a clear night illuminated by the bright light of the full moon, the street suddenly became quite noisy. On the territory of the women's dormitory, the girls began to make a fuss because someone had stolen the underwear of most of the residents there. A bunch of boys gathered together and began to look for the thief, following in his footsteps towards the women's bedrooms. Discussing this, absolutely all the boys were unhappy, saying that it was disgusting and humiliating. Shu Ting asked the guy who was making the most noise if he had seen that thief, to which Li Fei, that's the guy's name, gave a positive answer. At this time, he was going to the toilet and allegedly noticed a silhouette jumping on the walls. The next question he wanted to know was whether he had seen him, but it was too dark outside. But the guy saw that the thief was running along the corridors of the bedrooms. Shu Ting, taking on the role of commander, warned everyone that since the men's dormitory was located on the side of the corridor, the thief was most likely located there. The young guys standing nearby confirmed that what he said made sense, and the thief was most likely among them. Then Comrade Zhang came up and suggested gathering all the guys in the area and checking the bedrooms one by one, so the thief wouldn't have time to run too far and he wouldn't be able to hide. Shu Ting agreed with him, calling this idea amazing. They unanimously decided to start with the bedrooms, where there are no people and the doors are still closed, since they are the most suspicious. Just as they were about to begin their investigation, they were interrupted by an angry female voice. A young girl jumped over the fence. She is the daughter of one of the three great families of Yun Qingyan. She said that she would personally go there and check everything. Shu Ting asked a slightly insensitive question, asking if she had been robbed like other girls, to which she told him not to approach her and start an investigation. Shu calmly agreed, asking her to go forward and lead the entire group. The angry beauty cannot believe that there was a daredevil who dared to steal her underwear. Walking along the corridor along the rooms and paying close attention to each one, she chose her first target. The embittered Qingyan kicked the door to the first bedroom with a strong kick. There was a drunk guy in the room who didn't understand what was happening. Zhang, who crawled out from behind the girl, said that Mrs. Yun was looking for a criminal, and if the guy was not guilty of anything, then he would have to calm down and not pay attention to them. Having made sure that there was nothing in the poor guy's room, she and a group of noble guys headed to the next room. Walking along the corridor, she broke down door after door but could not find anything in any of them. And when she tried to take out the next door, nothing came of it, which surprised her. Taking the stance of an arrogant girl, as if she imagined herself to be a queen, she asked who lived in this room. Zhang said that a child from the Qing family of the eastern city should live there. Qingyan was surprised to hear who lived there and did not understand how someone like him dared to lock the door. Having stepped in front, he loudly began to shout that he was from the Qing family, an asshole who didn't value the personal presence of Madame Yun. He continued to yell for him to open the door, but his attempts were unsuccessful. Just as Qingyan was about to open the door with brute force, it suddenly swung open, and our hero's face appeared in front of her foot. Pretending to be sleepy, as if he had just woken up, Wu Shuang asked what they needed from him at such a late hour. Outraged by his slowness, Qingyan asked why he didn't open. Yawning, he replied that he was sleeping and did not hear that they were banging on his door, and they also interrupted the dream in which he was going to marry a beauty. Zhang attacked Wu Shuang, saying that he was pretending to be an idiot. He indignantly said that there had been a robbery in the women's dormitory, and the culprit was one of the boys. Hinting at something, he said that if he had nothing to hide, he was obliged to let him in to search his room. With a serious face, the hero leaning on the door said that he had no idea about the robbery, and, in general, why on earth should he let them in? Zhang continued to yell that he was hiding something because he refused to let them into the room. Objecting, our hero says that let Madame Yun check their rooms first, and maybe they are hiding something. Checking his room is not a problem, but hinting at a setup, he suggests searching their rooms first. Qingyan is decisively ready to meet Wu Shuang, and is interested in which rooms he wants to check. It doesn't matter to him because their owners can simply refuse. Trying to get into the conversation, Shu Ting wanted to ask a question, but our hero interrupted him and suggested that he set an example and start from his room. Putting his hand on his heart, he says that he is completely ready for the fact that Mrs. Yun wants to check his room. The guys standing behind him began to assent, which is also not against. Citing others' attitudes towards this matter as an example, Qingyan tells Wu Shuang to get out of the way or not blame her for being rude later. Throwing a disapproving glance in their direction, he agrees to let her in, saying that he is not doing this out of respect. He's just interested in the end of this whole story. Qingyan slowly walked into the room, crossing her arms over her chest. Having walked a little further, she began to look around and, of course, she was attracted by the most suspicious place, in this case, a large closet. Approaching him, Wu Shuang began shouting that she should not open it, that she should not do this. The boys made a noise, shouting that our hero was hiding something there and it was worth opening it. Qingyan looked suspiciously at Wu Shuang and was determined to open the closet, thinking that the thief was about to be caught. But alas, not this time. As soon as the closet door was opened, a large variety of dirty socks fell from the top shelf onto the girl's head. The guys watching all this had their jaws dropped in surprise. Angry, Qingyan began to accuse Wu Shuang of doing this on purpose, because no one in their common sense would put socks in a pile. Grinning, our hero said that since his room had been checked, the rest could not be so easily ignored. An angry Yun Qingyan left the room, saying that he just silently followed her. Wu Shuang agreed and followed her. Walking further down the corridor, they came to the last room. Near the door hung a beautiful sign with the inscription Number 1. Seeing the room, Qingyan realized that she recognized it. It belongs to one of the nobility of the country, Luojiang. Having considered her decision, she tried to quickly walk past without paying attention to her. But Wu Shuang did not let her do this, pointing his finger at the sign and saying that she had not checked this room yet. So why did she miss it? Provoking her, he added that she only checks the rooms of those who are weaker than her. Turning to Shu and Zhang, he noticed that they had become quiet. Zhang indignantly said that our hero simply did not deserve such an honor. Laughing, Wu Shuang moved on, noticing that they were simply afraid to go inside. He further mentioned that the owner of the room, Mr. Dai Xiang, doesn't even live there. Approaching the next room, our hero was attracted by the smell of some kind of fragrance, and he suggested that this could be the room of one of the girls. But it was Chu Ting's room. He immediately said that he was innocent, and if Wu Shuang continued to slander him, he would sue him for slander towards the nobility. Our hero continued to provoke everyone. This time he said that they should check his room, and if he refuses, then he becomes a suspect. While mentioning Qingyan, Shu began to get angry, not understanding what the main character was trying to achieve with his nasty speeches. Looking at Qingyan, Wu Shuang mentioned that since both Shu and she were from wealthy families, if she did not check his room personally, then he would not be able to help anymore. Shu Ting again puts her hand on her heart and says that if the lady wants to carry out an inspection, then his entire room is completely at her disposal because he is not afraid of anything. Having said that she has no reason not to check this room, she opens the door and goes in to begin her check. And of course, she immediately turned her attention to the closet standing against the wall with the doors slightly open. Looking at the gap between the doors without hesitation, she sharply opened it. Immediately, a whole bunch of women's underwear spilled out. The surprise of the guys standing on the threshold knew no bounds. As one, they all opened their mouths. And Shu Ting was dumbfounded by the surprise of what was happening and could not utter a single word. At the very top of the pile lay the panties with the bear image that had been stolen from Qingyan. While everyone was in shock, Wu Shuang called Shu Ting an animal, turned around and left the room with a grin on his face, leaving the boy alone with his problems. Yun Qingyan, getting seriously angry and loudly shouting Shu Ting's name, was ready to tear him apart. Exhausted, Tin tried to say something in his own defense, but did not have time. But after the loud boom, there was a loud scream that was heard throughout the entire area. The news that the Shu family heir was stealing underwear quickly spread throughout the country in just a few days, and Dean Jin was incredibly shocked by it. Shu Ting's reputation came to an end. All the girls insulted him when they saw him, looking at him with contempt. The dean, worried about him, tried to help somehow, but the guy told him to be quiet and not appear anywhere. In an attempt to clear his reputation, Dean Jin said that an investigation had been carried out, during which it was found that Shu Ting was busy practicing with other students at the time of the incident, so he had a strong alibi. His fans fully supported the dean's speech, agreeing that the young master was not capable of such an act. Feeling incredibly angry, he promised himself that sooner or later he would take revenge on Wu Shuang. Our hero, who watched the dean's speech, noticed that having a high status is very convenient, because you can always get away with it. In his opinion, if you do not have enough power or influence, then your life will be little different from the life of a mangy dog. The whole world is divided into a clear hierarchy, a thing or a person. Everything in it is part of it. The stronger you are, the higher you are on the hierarchy list, and all authority is built around your strength. Power is divided into clear boundaries at different levels. Different levels equal different privileges, and if you are weak, you will have nothing. And just the same, the Qing family to which our hero belongs is almost at the very bottom of the clerical ladder. After all the events that happened, let's fast forward a little later in the timeline and see that Wu Shuang has already broken through to the 9th level of power. Realizing how much his strength has increased, he decides that he is ready to use techniques from his past life. There are dozens of different techniques in his mind, and at this stage he only has to choose one. Looking through dozens of different techniques, he tried to find the perfect one. He went through book after book, but everything was not what he needed. And his gaze settled on the technique of True Inferno because in his past life he practiced it a lot. Deciding to start with what was most familiar to him, he began to comprehend this technique. A bright aura began to leak from his body and he entered a state of comprehension. The aura enveloped him like fire, and the closer he was to understanding the technique, the stronger it became. Having comprehended the first level, he immediately figured that when he reached the 2nd level, he would be able to deal with any master of combat arts no higher than the 2nd level of true power. His monologue was interrupted by a sudden knock on the door, which did not subside. A guy named Fang Xiao, Ping Yin's cousin, came running to him. He started shouting in panic that they had captured Brother Yin, and according to him, Xianzhang and the others were to blame for this. Angry, Wu Shuang decided that this time Zhang would not get off lightly. Remembering how Zhang beat him, he decided that today he would settle all scores with him. Angry, Wu Shuang learned where Ping Yin was and went to help him. At this time, the poor guy was hung upside down, and there was a whole crowd of nasty boys around him. Someone in the crowd was wondering whether Wu Shuang would come, and someone was denying it, because after the last beating, he would not have the courage to come. Zhang, grabbing Ping Yin by the hair, sarcastically asked him not to be offended and to blame his friend Qing Wu Shuang for everything, because he was only worried about his own skin. Raising his fist at the poor guy, he was about to strike, but a loud scream stopped him. Our hero walked through the crowd. He was filled with anger at these rich sons. In the crowd, various insults were heard in his direction, and some even suggested that he was practicing the secret art of being beaten. There were also those who began to bet whether Wu Shuang would die today or remain on the brink. Zhang and Shu Ting looked in his direction. They already had a plan for further action. They were surprised not just by his presence, but also by the look in which there was no fear. They were full of self-confidence. Standing in front of them, our hero demanded to release the innocent man because they only need him. Sui Ting, with a deft movement of his hand, cut the rope on which Ping Yin was suspended. Having lowered the guy to the ground, Wu Shuang ordered them to leave, and then he was going to figure it out himself. But Ping Yin completely refused to leave. He wanted to prove that he was worth something and was not afraid of them. Xianzhang began to mention how he beat the main character to a pulp, and simultaneously asked whether he would like to learn such a lesson again. Wu Shuang asked if he was sure of his words, and whether he really intended to settle old scores. The crowd enthusiastically began shouting in support of Xianzhang to beat our hero to death. Xianzhang has been waiting for months for the moment to avenge Shu Ting, and here it is, this long-awaited chance to try out new techniques on a live pair. Folding his hands in front of his comrade Shu Ting, he respectfully called him master and asked him to play the role of judge. He, in turn, agreed to be him, because the battle is based on old grievances. Wu Shuang said with a grin that Shu Ting must have fun acting as a judge for his servant. Shu was already mentally imagining how our hero would die, and he was 100% sure of it. On the territory of the academy, rumors had already begun to spread that a duel had taken place in the bamboo forest. Duel between Wu Shuang and Xianzhang. Most were surprised because just recently he had been beaten half to death. While everyone headed towards the place of the duel, one strange guy remained on the balcony, who apparently was not particularly interested in this event. While everyone was heading into the forest, Shu Ting announced the start of the battle by raising his hand. A lively crowd of young people shouted for Xianzhang to beat Wu Shuang to death. Ping Yin and her cousin also stayed to watch because they were worried about their comrade who came to help them. Standing opposite our hero, Xianzhang said that this time he would not be able to get off easily, and today would be the day of his death. Smirking, Wu Shuang suggested that he try to carry out his plan. With a sharp jerk, Xianzhang began to approach his opponent, wanting to strike. Since our hero didn't move, Zhang had a feeling of dominance and easy victory. But Wu Shuang easily dodged the oncoming blow at the last moment with incredible speed. Not understanding what happened and how such a loser could dodge, he threw everything away to luck. A whole barrage of incessant blows fell on our hero, but he dodged everyone as if for him it was nothing more than a child's game. Xianzhang, starting to lose his breath, didn't understand what was happening. Where did the mediocre get such speed? Wu Shuang, never tired, continued to dodge all the flying attacks, and the smile never left his face. Jumping back, Xianzhang called our hero a coward capable only of dodging and nothing more. The crowd supporting him, having agreed, began to shout that Wu Shuang was a pathetic coward, and that he had no sense in evading, and that he was only disgracing himself. With indifference, our hero said that he could not help himself because his opponent was incredibly slow, and even a child could dodge his attacks. Angry, Xianzhang began to emit an aura. He said that he was now using his new technique and Wu Shuang would die instantly. The crowd, surprised, began to say that he was almost at the level of Mr. Shu Ting, and from their conversations, one could find out that Zhang was at the 3rd level of power. Taking a stance, all the aura began to accumulate in Xianzhang's fist. Loudly shouting the name of his technique, Fist of the Crushing Wind, he lunged forward and delivered a swift blow to our hero's torso. A bright explosion occurred around Wu Shuang and a cloud of dust rose up. Xianzhang, with a smile on his face, was completely sure that our hero's speed was not enough to dodge, and now, if he is not dead, then at least he has become crippled. The crowd perked up and everyone was surprised by such a powerful blow. Ping Yin and his cousin were very worried about what happened to their friend. Shu Ting, smiling, mentally noted the death of his enemy. Slowly, the dust and smoke from the impact began to dissipate. Suddenly, Xianzhang's face was covered not just with surprise, but more with some kind of fear of the unexpected. Evil, red eyes looked at him through the fog. A chill ran through his body. Fear enveloped him and he could not move. A safe and sound Wu Shuang stood in front of him, and it was his furious eyes that he saw in the smoke. Shu Ting was also surprised, who also could not find a single word, because he was dumbfounded from surprise. As soon as the smoke cleared, the entire crowd of observers were surprised that Wu Shuang not only did not suffer, but did not even budge. While giving his opponent a terrifying look in his head, he mentions that he is already at the 1st level of true power. Only when he managed to reach it remains a mystery. Emitting a huge amount of aura, our hero said that Xianzhang will be the only one who will lose his life in this duel. Our hero's opponent was filled with a sense of fear, his eyes filled with horror and his mouth unable to say anything. The next moment, Wu Shuang's swift fist was in Xianzhang's face. The blow was so strong that the guy flew into a stone standing behind, crushing it, and after his rapid flight, traces of the aura from the protagonist's fist remained. Just one blow and the annoying Xianzhang lies lifeless in a pile of stones. The crowd watching the fight simply had no words. They silently looked at it with their eyes wide. Having recovered a little from the shock of shock, the boys began to discuss in surprise that their invincible Xianzhang died from just one single blow. They could not understand how a guy from an ordinary family could defeat the elite. Our hero stands proudly with a smile, completely covered with the remainder of the aura, observing the surrounding situation. While Wu Shuang's friends ran up to him, filled with joy for his victory, Shu Ting, standing on the side, could not understand how an ordinary villager could become stronger so quickly. Pin Yin and his cousin with sparkling eyes began to wonder what kind of technique their sworn brother was using, and he in turn promised that he would somehow teach them, but now they need to leave. Not forgetting about Shu Ting standing aside, our hero looked at him mockingly and thanked him for being their judge. The incredibly angry guy didn't know what to do. The henchman standing behind him also did not know how to support him. Gathering his thoughts and taking a deep breath, he ordered the guys to go and report to the government that Qing Wu Shuang killed the Zhang family's elephant in one-on-one combat. The next shot shows 2 people running out of the gate of the Qing family, and a bunch of gifts are flying at their backs. It was Liang Shan who drove out the representatives of the Niu family who owned the herbal store. These arrogant bastards dared to propose based on their relationship with the Shu family, but he does not intend to give his daughter to such scum. Our hero's sister, without fear of anything, says that she has nothing to fear as long as he and Wu Shuang are nearby. Feeling a little sad, the father began to wonder how his son was doing at the academy, because he had not heard news from him for a long time. Let's return to our hero. He and his comrades, being in their room, discussed what to do next, whether they should run or stay. Pinyin insisted on staying, because a large number of people were watching the battle, and no one could blame them. Wu Shuang claimed that everything would work out, but it was still better for them to stay away from him, and this way no one could accuse them of anything. But the guys refused, because all this happened because Pinyin was captured and he came to his aid, so they are ready to be with him until the very end. With a suspicious smile, Wu Shuang agreed that they should stay, because Jin Bui was supposed to appear any minute. As the main character said, the dean arrived almost immediately, accompanied by Shu Ting and other guys. He immediately began accusing him of murder, saying that all the evidence was against him. Fully confident, Wu Shuang left the room saying that not everyone around him was blind and that it was an absolutely fair fight and Lord Shu acted as a judge. Shu Ting, trying to make our hero guilty, tells the dean that all his words are lies, and he killed Xianzhang out of his hatred of him. Fully confident that no one would dare go against his family, he glanced around at the crowd standing behind him. All the witnesses as one began to pretend to be ignorant fools. Jin Bui, with a wide smile filled with contempt, began to say that no one could justify Wu Shuang. His friends came out from behind our hero, and were going to testify that their friend was innocent of anything. But the dean did not want to listen, citing the fact that they could protect him, since they were from the same city. Then the head of the Zhao family, Mao Zhang, and his eldest son Yao Zhang came. Appearing with an embittered face, he began to find out who the killer of his son was, and the elder wanted to challenge him to a fight. Approaching the dean, he asked why he didn't just arrest the culprit, to which Jin said that everything would be done now. Ordering his students to seize Wu Shuang, he said that he had no evidence that could prove his innocence. Having spread his arms, the main character began to shout that they were all just cowards who would never in their lives dare to tell the truth in the presence of great families, that they would be simple dogs for the rest of their lives. Jin Buyi told Wu Shuang to stop talking nonsense and ordered the others to quickly capture the culprit. But then the same guy who had been left watching from the balcony entered the courtyard. He told everyone to stop. Everyone knew him very well. He was Daxi Yan from the great Daxi family, a sophisticated young man with white skin and long white hair. Looking at Shu Ting with his calm blue eyes, which showed disgust, he condemned the way he performed the duties of a judge. Everyone was very surprised by the appearance of a person from such an influential family, and many also noticed that he was clearly not happy with Shu Ting. Jin Buyi immediately began to suck up, saying that he was ready to listen to everything said by the respected gentleman, and also mentioned that he was embarrassed when other countries had a reason to laugh at their old one. Daxi Yang agreed to act as a witness. From his words, he made it clear that the duel between Qing Wushuang and Xianzhang was absolutely fair, and Shu Ting indeed acted as a judge in it. Unexpecting that such an influential person would act as a witness for such trash as our hero, Head Zhao asked that justice would overtake him. Turning towards them, Daxi Yan said that all members of the Daxi family always keep their word. Our hero's friends immediately attacked the dean with the claim that since there is evidence, now something needs to be done with those who falsified the evidence. The confused Jin Buyi began to admire that all the cases required a thorough investigation, and that Wu Shuang, according to his words, was constantly adding problems to the academy. Pointing his finger at him, he continued to shout that this time he had completely violated the harmony of the academy. With indifference, Wu Shuang said that he was sure that the dean would simply throw him out of the academy, while simultaneously emitting a terrifying aura. Getting even more angry, Dean Jin asked if our hero doubted his abilities. A sharp response from an indifferently smiling Wu Shuang. He asked Jin Buyi if he was sure that our hero wanted to stay in the academy. He directly told the unbearable old man that he stayed there for a couple of months only to wait for the moment to kill the idiot Xianzhang. The old man could not find words. He stood and stuttered, not knowing what to answer. Without waiting for an answer, our hero walked past the dean and said that he was not going to stay at this academy a minute longer. His friends followed him. He decided to shout to the departing hero in the back that he would not allow him to take the martial arts exam in 3 years. Wu Xuan was not taken aback and said that Jin Buyi's greed has no limit. From the words of our hero, we understand that the sacred land of Zhengwu will send its people to take the exam, while the dean is simply a servant who has no right to influence the exam. Immediately behind the dean, the head of Zhao decided to speak with a slander that he would not be able to leave after the murder of his son. Looking at the elder, the main character asked if he was really going to kill him publicly. In thought, he assessed his approximate level of strength and came to the conclusion that he could not defeat him yet. The third was Shu Ting, who shouted to Wu Shuang that he would not last long with his pride. Having stopped, he ordered everyone to listen. According to him, all the blame lies with them because of their own negligence towards his family. Looking towards his ill-wishers with a furious look, he said that unlike the mountains that can never meet, he will wait for their meeting in 3 years, and then they will all regret that they got involved with our hero. Head Zhao could barely contain his anger, and Jin Buyi told him to be careful because now the Qing family was under the protection of Daxi. He is also sure that in 3 years their little family will be destroyed. I honestly don't know where he got this confidence from, but oh well. The next day they showed us Daxi Yan. Next to him stood the elder of his family, Daxi Heng, and it was Heng who became interested in Wu Shuang, saying that he was not as simple as he might seem. The head of Daxi had a dialogue with his son about how Qing Wu Shuang, although he was in the poor class, made it even more interesting to watch. Having waited for a long time for the moment to strike at the end, now the rest of the families, if they try to rob his family, at most they will only find problems for their own. Daxi Yan asked his father why the situation was changing so much because of a simple dispute between students, to which he received the answer that if he had not acted as a witness, then everything could have been simpler. But because of his testimony, the situation became a little different. The father continued talking and further told his son that now the Shu family will be wary because of the possibility of the Qing family being connected with them. The guy offered to simply prove that they do not have any relationship and are not connected in any way. But he stopped Yang because from his point of view, they should not be nice to aristocrats like the Jiang family. Moreover, he considers Wu Shuang to be quite a brave young man. Next, the guy decided to ask his father for news about his older brother, to which his father said that he was already big and would soon come to his senses. Who is this brother and what happened to him, we don't know yet. Hearing this answer, he seemed satisfied with it. Next, we are transported to our hero. At this time, he and his friends are heading home in a carriage drawn by one horse. His friends panic that an ambush may await them along the way. Calmly, he assures them that nothing like that will happen, and they decide to clarify exactly why he thinks so. Looking at them, he said all the words in which he mentioned the esteemed Daxi family. While the news of Wu Shuang defeating a member of a famous family and leaving the academy spreads like fire, his father and sister decide to go out to meet him. Walking out of the family gate, you can see joyful smiles on their faces. The father proudly says that his son was able to win glory for the family with his victory. Their conversation was interrupted by two unknown people. One of them said that he was glad to see Mrs. Xu Er come out to meet him. It was the herbal seller Niu Dai with his eldest son Niu Fen. Well, they are handsome, of course. Dai suggested that his son go and talk to Mrs. Xu Er. Not having time to approach the girl, Fenya's father stood in her way and asked what questions he had for them. Dai said that they had come to propose marriage to them and discuss some possibilities of cooperation. Frowning his eyebrows, Lian Shan asked if these two really came to cooperate. Just as the father was about to answer something, he was suddenly interrupted by a voice repeating his words, and he and his daughter turned around in surprise. It was Wu Shuang, who had just returned home. Calling out to his father and sister, he said that he was glad to see them, to which they reciprocated, because they also missed him. Dai congratulated the returning young master on his victory over a member of a famous family, but in his mind, he was sure that it would not have been possible without someone's help. Turning his attention to the vile old man, Wu Shuang warned him that he was late, and the Shu family had already retracted their words about the destruction of his family. Do not believe the words of our hero. He began to talk about his close relationship with Mr. Shu, and that as soon as the head of Qing gave up his place, and also accepted the marriage proposal, he would be ready to provide them with security. Confident in his words, Wu Shuang, looking at Dai with a cold gaze, said that he should go back to where he came from, and they would wait until Shu did something against them. The herbalist, dissatisfied that an ordinary child interacted with him like that, asked if the elder agreed that the family was actually ruled by a brat. Lian Shan, saying that his son's words were also his words, asked Naya to leave. Fen, baring his rabbit fangs, began to shout indignantly that if Wu Shuang did not allow him to marry his sister, then when she crawled to him with pleas for marriage, he would not accept them. When leaving, our hero looked at the younger Nia, calling him a baby, and invited him to marry their cows. After his words, he loudly and demonstratively slammed the door in front of Naya. The offended handsome men angrily said that the Qing family cannot distinguish between good and bad, and will soon simply rot. As soon as Niu's family left them, our hero, surrounded by his family, sat down at a table in the courtyard. Wu Shuang began the conversation by mentioning his thoughts. He thought that his father would be ashamed of him because he left the academy. But Lian Shan never even thought about such a thing, because defeating a member of a famous family is already worthy of respect. The main character says that Xianzhang's death was just the beginning, because it will only get worse. Wu Shuang's father tensedly said that those rich people would not be able to leave such an incident aside and coughed. As soon as the cough intensified, Lian Shan began to spit blood. The children, frightened, jumped up to him. But the main character immediately noticed what happened to their father. He saw a large amount of tangled energy inside his father's body, and immediately knew that it was due to overuse of training. Looking at him carefully, in his head he expressed his thoughts that since his father's training methods are not the best, then if he rushes into training, he will quickly fall asleep due to internal energy, just like he did in his previous life. Trying to calm the children down, he said that a bug had gotten into his mouth. But his daughter, not believing such a stupid excuse, suggested calling a doctor. Having stopped his sister, our hero, with a face full of confidence, said that he knew a way to help his father. Lian Shan and Xu Er were both a little shocked by this statement and asked if it was a joke. In the very next frame, we see how Wu Shuang poked a bunch of needles into his father. The sister standing next to her asked how her father was feeling. He said that his meridians had become softer, and he also felt a lot better. The main character explained to his father that he had gone too far with training, and his internal ki energy did not have time to clear itself in time. It was as a result of such an error that his meridians were upset, and with the help of silver needles, our hero was able to remove unstable energy from the body. Having praised his son, the father immediately asked where he learned such techniques, to which he received the answer that during the many years he spent at the academy, he read quite a lot of the books there. After his explanation, our hero mentally noted that silver needles can only relieve symptoms, but not cure a person. The more Lian Shan trains, the worse he will become. In order for him to be completely cured, Wu Shuang decides that he must read the masterpiece of the Shaolin school, the Book of Changing Tendons, cleanse the spinal cord, and completely cut off his hair. Having copied this book in advance, he resolutely gives it to his father, saying that he took it to the library of the academy but did not understand what was written there. Incredibly surprised by what was written inside the book, O2 decided to clarify whether his son actually took such a masterpiece at the academy. Wu Shuang already had an excuse ready. He said that Jin Bui still couldn't understand, so thinking that there might be valuable information there, he quietly took it with him. Surprisingly, it worked, and my father said that it was not surprising that such an amazing book could be found in an academy that had existed for a couple of centuries. Padoya from behind asked his father what was written in this book. Reading the book, he replied that it was a collection of quite serious techniques, which their family sorely lacked. Wu Shuang quoted lines from the book about how he would have to cut off all his hair and clear his brain from his back. He asked if it was risky. The father's answer was short. According to him, all strong people, one way or another, expose themselves to risks. Lian Shan wanted to give such a great book to his son, but our hero refused, saying that he would not be able to use it now, and suggested that his father try it, because there was a chance that it would heal him. Agreeing with his son, he decided to be the first to study the instructions from the book, and later promised to teach them to the main character. After telling Xu Er to watch his backside, he wanted to concentrate on training, and mentioned that with the help of this book, there is a chance to reach the second level of true strength before evaluating families. Smiling, Wu Shui suggested in his thoughts that with the collection of techniques described in the book for 3 years, his father had every chance of breaking through even the true power of the 4th level. While our hero was talking with his family, the head of the Zhang family stood in front of the coffin of his son, and behind him stood the same Mr. Xu. The incredibly embittered head Zhang, cursing Wu Shuang, wishes that his entire family would know such grief. Mr. Xu, saying that he understood his feelings, warned that revenge would have to be postponed sooner. Zhang, looking angrily at Xu, understood that due to the fact that his son was drawn into the Xu family's attempts to seize the Qing's place, he immediately believed that the Qing were to blame for everything. Clenching his fist, he said that Mr. Xu can be calm, because he understands everything. His hands were shaking from the bitterness of loss and the thirst for revenge. But realizing that it was not time yet, he said that he would allow the Qing family to live a little longer. After all the events, Wu Shuang stands proudly on the cliff of the mountain. An incredible view of the city and the surrounding mountains opens up in front of him. Closing his eyes, he raised his head and took a deep breath, preparing for something. Having set himself up, he jumped off the cliff and rushed down without fear of anything. Upon landing, he did not stop smiling, and from his words we learned that several days had already passed since his arrival home, and the place where he practices is called Mount Sang, and the practice there is much better. He was distracted from his thoughts by voices calling him. These were friends who had come to see our hero. Approaching them, Wu Shuang said that the two of them had been taught a good lesson like this at home, but they just grinned at him in response, not paying attention to the fact that they both had bruises and bandages on their faces. They told how they were scolded at home for communicating with our hero, and for being expelled from the academy without permission. But in general, the guys came on another matter. It turns out that in the morning they heard from his sister that he was going to climb to the top of Mount Sang. Confirming the words of his friends, Wu Shuang asked if they would like to go with him. They replied that now all they could do was study some basic family techniques, and they had no books on martial arts at all, and they weren't even sure that they would be able to pass the exams. After their stories, they asked how Wu Shuang trains, because he was able to defeat Xianzhang in just a couple of months. And they also enthusiastically asked if he could help them become stronger. Our hero was surprised that children born in such poor families had such a strong spirit. He wondered how the past Wu Shuang was able to make such good friends. With a serious look, the main character invited his friends to select a set of cultivation techniques, and assured them that if they followed them, they would pass the exam without any problems. The inspired boys agreed to follow all the instructions of their friend, and for the next 3 months, Wu Shuang trained with them. Every day in the middle of the forest, they did hundreds of push-ups in the fresh air in one set. Next came a rack with weights for endurance training. Despite all the hardships of the training, they did not give up and continued to train hard. This was followed by meditation requiring high concentration in order to raise the level of internal qi energy. The meditation was followed by a run, The guys had to jump over obstacles in an attempt to catch up with Wu Shuang. While they were running downhill, Pinyin decided to mention that today, they were almost able to catch up with our hero. While Wu Shuang stood calmly and looked into the distance, one of the duo said breathlessly that finally they had not lost him while they were running after him. Letting out heavy sighs, Pinyin hopefully asked if they were able to at least get one step closer to his level. Instead of answering, he simply showed that he had 2 more weights on his legs. Both guys were shocked by what they saw and couldn't understand how he could train with such things all this time. Smiling, Wu Shuang said that from tomorrow they will have to do everything the same as he did. Their surprise probably knew no bounds. To calm them down, he told them that he was going to teach them several aggressive martial arts techniques, and the guys' attention was diverted by this. Having said that their personalities are different, their techniques must also be different. The first was Hu Pinyin. He received the 18 vials technique to study, a very powerful and fierce technique for real men. Next was Fang Xiaozhong. He will have to learn the capture the flexible serpent technique, which offers tricks in a fight against traditions. Having handed them out, the technician Wu Shuang told him to listen carefully and repeat exactly after him. Closing his eyes, he voiced a short mantra, which the guys needed to repeat. After repeating it, a large amount of aura began to swirl around their bodies. Xiaozhong did not expect that from simply reading the mantra he could feel such a powerful force. Of course, the boy was very surprised by this. Pinyin, of course, was no less surprised than his comrade. Realizing that such power cannot be compared with the family techniques, he decided to clarify whether our hero was really giving them all this. Smiling widely, Wu Shuang said that he was giving it to them. They were friends. After that, they all began to train intensively together. Their strength grew day by day, and now we see the Pranish being embittered by the fact that they were sending Wu Shuang, Pinyin's father, to Qing. With a club in his hand, he walks and wonders how he cannot kill the 2 little brats, who, despite all the comments, still ran away. But his gaze was filled with surprise when he saw those 2 sparring in the backyard. Their blows were very strong for their age, and their techniques reminded my father of a fight between an aggressive bear and a flexible snake, anticipating each attack. He simply could not understand where the once weak brats got such strength from. Loudly calling them by name, he asked who taught them this. The guys, frightened by the unexpected appearance of their father, said that it was all the merit of Wu Shuang. Enraged, she began to scold Pinyin and Xiaozhong again, saying that the Qing family had insulted the rich families, and nothing good would happen to them now. He orders them to stay as far away from our hero as possible. Xiaozhong decided to come forward, saying that they had learned a lot from Wu Shuang, but his uncle confidently said that he could not be better than a normal teacher. The old man decided to test the boys, ordering them to simultaneously attack with all their strength, and also assured that he would not even need to use internal strength. Pinyin, saying that he didn't want to hurt his father, asked if he was sure, but nothing could convince him, and he insisted that they attacked him with all their might. Standing in front of him, both guys took fighting stances and began to emit a strong aura in preparation for the strike. Confident in his own strength, he thought that he wouldn't even have to try, and also that once they felt the power of a strong man, they would stop running to their grief-stricken friend. Pinyin, realizing that his father is a master of true power, decides to give it his all. Having released all their strength, the boys dealt a heavy blow to the old man's stomach, so much so that his vision grew dim. For a moment he was shocked, perhaps even lost consciousness. Pinyin, afraid for his father, asked in a panic if he was okay. The old man, who reacted sharply, raised his hand and said that attacks of such a low level could not affect him in any way. But instead of scolding them, he put his hands on their shoulders and said that they should continue training with Wu Shuang. Turning around with a serious look, the father began to leave, saying that he would go to his room to rest. Xiaozhong was surprised by the strength of a person at the level of true might, but as soon as he turned the corner of the building, all his seriousness evaporated and he fell to his knees. Blood burst out of his mouth like a fountain, which he tried so hard to hold back in front of the guys, so as not to show his weakness. Sweating heavily and catching his breath, he began to realize that even if they looked weak on the outside, in reality they could reach incredible heights. Imagining the image of Wu Shuang, he decided that it seemed that his victory in that duel was deserved by his strength, and not by some kind of deception. After thinking a little, he finally agreed not to bother Pinyin and Xiaozhong anymore, because with the help of Wu Shuang, they could bring their families to unprecedented heights. Continuing their training, the boys became stronger under the clear guidance of our hero. Almost every day they sparred to test their strength. Xiaozhong told Pinyin that with each passing day he felt stronger and stronger. Pinyin, in turn, praised the techniques received from brother Wu Shuang, saying that they were simply incredible. He also said that it would be great if they managed to get to the 5th level of martial arts before the exam, because having achieved it further, they would be able to move towards true power. which would later help him stop being afraid of his father's blows. Smiling, our hero watched them sprout, and in his thoughts he mentioned that using force to build family relationships is quite interesting. But when Wu Shuang changes their training set from basic techniques to something more complex, they will be able to reach incredible heights. Rising from his seat, he warned his friends that he was going to go climb higher and set off. Having reached a new place, he chose a convenient stone in the open area as a stop. Sitting more comfortably, he began to cultivate. An aura covered his body, and a small fireball began to form between his hands. Putting his hand in front of him, the previously accumulated fire went to the side and its power was incredible. Wu Shuang began a monologue that after a year he was able to upgrade his fire technique to the 6th level, which is approximately 10% of what it was in his previous life. His intention to restore at least 80 Prohuentoa before assessing the families has not yet disappeared. Looking forward confidently, our hero was going to lead the Qing family to the top, everything he has in this life and he simply must protect. Over the next 2 years, Hu Pingyin and Feng Xiaozhong mastered their martial arts skillfully. Qing Lichen Shan was able to reach the 3rd level of true power with the help of the Book of Tendon Change, which is very commendable. And our hero, who was not only able to master the true Inferno technique, but was also able to practice new ones, such as the Frozen Finger and Strikes of 9 Suns. After 2 years that flew by in an instant, the martial arts exam officially began. Wu Shuang, kneeling with incense in his hands, paid tribute to his ancestors. Over these 2 years, the main character has changed quite a lot. He has become taller and much more attractive. This is what it means to grow up. The day of registration arrived, and a lot of people wanted to take part gathered in front of the entrance arch. Our hero was also there with his father and sister. Xu Er looked around and said that the street was very busy. Lian Shan responded to her words that, after all, such a major event does not happen often. In his thoughts, Wu Shuang noticed that knowing Lian Shan's character, he would not have fought for the highest place, but would have stayed with what he had. Having finished his thought, he asked his father to give him the registration form to fill out. Handing him the form, his father said that sooner or later, he would still come face to face with this, and added that he and his sister would be waiting for him outside. Looking at the table, he noticed that only the entrance fee eliminated many people, because while for the rich the price was 1 tael of gold, the peasants had to pay 50 taels in the same gold. Looking at the form, he thought that since the ancestors were in the rich class, which is the highest among the classes of Shu, his father would be glad if he came out to restore it. To obtain the status of a rich family, you must have at least 1 warrior of the 4th level of true power. Looking around, Wu Shuang is confident that with his strength, he will defeat anyone whose level does not exceed the 8th level of true power. It turns out that our hero was able to rise to the 8th level of true power in 2 years. Having brought the form to the receptionist, he, without even looking at him, told him to put it down, and throwing him a badge, said that he could only enter with his help. But as soon as the head of the Yun family approached him with his daughter, he jumped up from his chair and joyfully greeted him. The main character was incredibly angry at this attitude, due to a simple difference in family status. Returning to the family, Wu Shuang saw a crowd of heads of other large families standing around his father and sister. In front of them stood Head Jiang and Shu. Head Jiang, turning to the father of our hero, demands that someone like him, the patriarch of a poor family, show courtesy to the honorable gentleman, and also understand that he has no manners. They were already surrounded by a crowd of onlookers, beginning to convene even more people under the pretext that the rich were again mocking the poor. Lian Shan, realizing that his son is about to begin his martial arts test, feels that it would be awkward to argue with them in public. Head Zheng, despite the fact that Head Qing is doing nothing, begins to laugh contemptuously in his face. And then Wu Shuang passes between them, who, without the slightest manners, greets everyone as if they were old friends. Looking at Zhang, he says that he looks bad, and asks if he has ever had nightmares. Mr. Shu butts into the conversation, calling our hero an arrogant child. He tells him that one of the most important things in being a person is to know when to retreat and when to advance. Looking at him, Wu Shuang says that he understands what the master is talking about, and he promises to give up the current place of his family. Calling our hero's aspiration a wise choice, he told Lian Shan that his son was much smarter than him. As he was about to leave, Wu Shuang folded his hands and said that this was a promise and they would meet later. Head Zhang approached Shu and asked whether he believed the words spoken by Qing Wu Shuang. Shu replied that it doesn't matter whether he believes it or not, but he is sure that the Qing family will eventually have to pick up someone's piece of meat thrown on the floor. Shu also mentioned that he had been investigating, and in the past 3 years, the Qing family had no contact with the Daxi family. Thinking it's already clear what this means, coming out of the arch where the registration was held, Shu Er immediately told Wu Shuang that even the status of a poor family was achieved by their father with great difficulty, asking if he really wants to give up their place, and if so, what will he say to his ancestors in this case. Lian Shan knows that his son would never give up their place. Then why did he say this no matter how hard he tries? He cannot understand him. Our hero told the family not to worry. In his head, he mentioned that since the Shu family wants their place, he will gladly give them the poor class, because his plans are to move to the rich class, and the hour when the Qing family will rise is closer than ever. Already at night, the father asked Wu Shuang to rest well and be ready for tomorrow's exam. Lying down on the bed, our hero became lost in his thoughts and began to reason that if it weren't for the rules, then the rich would have already passed the exam simply by paying. But he quickly got tired of it. Just as he was about to fall asleep, Wu Shuang saw a strange glow outside his window, which greatly alarmed him. The next second, a killer broke through the window into the protagonist's room and was about to finish off our hero with one blow. Raising his gaze to the killer, in front of his face was a blow filled with strong chi energy. Reacting quickly, he intercepted the enemy's hand, extended it further, and gathering strength in his hand, was about to strike. From the force of the hand flying at the killer, the mask on his face flew off, and he himself was in indescribable shock from what was happening. With a sharp movement of his hand, Wu Shuang grabbed the unsuccessful killer by the throat. The killer could not move. He did not understand how an ordinary boy could have the power to stop a person with true power. Releasing his furious power, his eyes were filled with powerful qi so much that they began to shine. The evil Wu Shuang rudely and briefly asked who sent him. Frightened, the killer felt an incredibly oppressive aura on himself. He was sure that he would be killed if he said even something unnecessary. Without hearing an answer, Wu Shuang pulled him towards him, looking at him with his chilling eyes, in which one could see an incredible thirst for murder. Frightened and unable to withstand the pressure from the main character, he spoke. In a hoarse voice, he said the name of Maoryu Jiang, who is the head of the Jiang family, and also the fact that after the murders of Wu Shuang, he also ordered him to kidnap his sister in order to have fun later with her. With a slight movement of his hand, our hero took the life of the killer without the slightest drop of pity. Looking at the corpse of the murderer lying on the floor, he repeated the name of the head of the Jiang family several times and added that he did not deliberately provoke him, but since he could not sit quietly, he would no longer see a peaceful life. Having said that since Mr. Jiang likes to play so much, he agrees to join him, and they will play until Jiang begins to beg our hero to stop. While he uttered such cold words filled with malice, his lust for killing reached the highest level in his entire time in this world. Showing a busy street, we are told that the most successful participant is at the 9th level of martial arts. On average, students are at the 4th or 5th level. A bunch of rich children can reach the 6th or 7th level. Many are unsure, but at this time it is believed that only Daxi Yan has reached the 9th level of martial arts. And then our hero comes on stage with his family and notices the liveliness of the event. We are shown Qing Yan and his father, standing and smiling because they are confident in their strength. Then Shu Ting and his henchmen, when they saw Ting, all the girls looked at him in admiration. He is fully confident that he will be able to pass the exam this year. Suddenly, his attention was attracted by the fact that all the 2-room apartments had turned away somewhere. In fact, they noticed Daxi Yan passing by and turned their attention to him. Looking at him angrily, Shu Ting thought that Daxi would be his only rival. Further on, it shows the grown-up Pinyin and Xiao Zhang, who came to Wu Shuang. Having met, our hero immediately noticed that his friends looked quite confident, but they agreed with him and said that they would be ashamed if they were not so confident after such training. Then the freak Niyu with his second son Niyu Do approached the company of our hero and said that Lian Shan's son had come just to watch the performance. Ping Yin stepped forward and threatened Do for insulting his friend. Niyu Do said that the two of them do nothing but follow Wu Shuang and offered to join him. Only Pin Yin was about to start an argument as our hero stopped the rocks. That Do was completely right and they were still scum. Passing by, he touched his shoulder, advising him to take care of himself during the exam. With a gesture towards Wu Shuang's shoulder, he poured his aura into Niyu Do's body, and for what purpose we will find out later. While our hero was walking on his way, the herbalist Niyu noticed Daxi Yan and called out to him. He turned to him, saying that he supported poor families, and was just about to say something. Yang interrupted him and threw a cold look in his direction, telling him to fuck off. He tried to appeal to several other rich people, all of whom rejected him, at which our hero's friends laughed a lot. Lian Shan asked Wu Shuang not to let him down. He said that everything would be fine. And taking their friends, they went to show everything they were capable of. The next shot showed us a beautiful girl with a refined figure. This is the presenter, and her name is Ying Xuan. She announced short rules. The first test would be a 100-mile run around the Luojiang area, and their assessment would depend on the time of arrival. She also warned that they would be watched all the way, so they wouldn't cheat. Telling them to get ready, she struck a seductive pose. and with a loud cry she announced the beginning. All participants rushed forward at full speed. Having run through the exit beyond the wall of the district, everyone tried to get ahead. Xu Ting, who was running in front of Wu Shuang, looked at him with contempt. Turning around, he said that such overgrown ones from poor families should swallow dust behind. Wu Shuang smiled and decided to show him which of them was better. And unexpectedly, Xu Ting took the lead with just one deft movement. Turning to look at his opponent, our hero sarcastically wished him bon appetit. And accelerating even more, he overtook everyone, including Qinyan and Yang, who were in front. He became the first on the list. He ran at such a speed that every second he moved further and further from his rivals. Xu Ting, very angry, did not understand how this was even possible. Daxi Yan calmly wondered how strong Wu Shuang had become during the time they had not seen each other. Qingyan was no less surprised than the others. She couldn't believe that this was still the same Wu Shuang from before. Two people stood at the first post and discussed who would be the winner this year. Suddenly, someone ran in front of them at incredible speed, and they were quite surprised. Meanwhile, we saw why our hero touched the shoulder of Niu Du, who was now sitting under a tree. Daxi Yan ran past the same post. One of the onlookers asked if it was Daxi's son who had just run by. The second confirmed it. Afterwards, both looked at each other in surprise and wondered who was first then. At this time, Wu Shuang continued to run without slowing down. Because after 3 years of running the Sang Mountain workout, such an activity is no more difficult than going to the toilet. He rushed past every point along the way with incredible speed. And so he crosses the finish line with a smile on his face. The judge was in a stupor because he didn't even have time to finish his lunch. After giving Wu Shuang a score sheet, the judge told him to go to the next test site. Watching the main character move on, the judge, while eating noodles, suggested that no one in the Baiwei kingdom could compare with him. There were 2 people at the second exam site. A muscular man and a gray-haired old man. They were discussing that the difficulty of the exam had increased this year. They were distracted from the dialogue by someone's voice from behind, who politely asked them to pay attention to him. Wu Shuang stood behind him, raising 2 iron balls at once and asking if this was how it was done. The judges were incredibly surprised that he was able to lift 2 balls at once, and even the heaviest ones, each weighing 1,500 kilograms. Having given the form to our hero, the judge decided to ask if he was really 18. Having accepted the form, Wu Shuang replied with a smile that lying about age is the privilege of the rich, and he did not see that poor children also had such opportunities. The hero, proudly walking further up the stairs, was looked at in the back by 2 examiners, one of whom praised him, calling him a provincial genius. The next examiners in order are resting on chairs. The older one, without opening his eyes, says that you can still sleep peacefully because the run will not end soon. But their leisurely rest was interrupted by the main character, who, standing in front of them, asked if he had come there. The old man stood up from his chair in surprise and asked a counter-question, what specific test the young man had come for, and at the same moment received an answer that he had come to take an agility test. Perplexed, the examiner first asked with interest whether he understood correctly that the guy had already passed the strength test, and received a satisfactory answer. Approaching our hero, he listed 3 possible levels of test difficulty: easy, medium, and difficult. Having inquired which one he preferred to go through, he immediately heard that he wanted to go straight to the difficult level. The old man frowned and asked if the guy was sure of his choice. He told him that to pass, he would have to dodge 30 flying knives. As soon as Wu Shuang said to start, several people immediately appeared around him and began to throw knives at him, but he did not tense up much. Without showing a single drop of emotion, he stood motionless until all the knives were near his body. The examiners, seeing this behavior, could not understand why he was not moving, and while the older one asked the boy to make him move, the younger one said that it was too late. But our hero is not as simple as it seems. In an instant, he began to avoid absolutely all attacks aimed at him with ease, and with his eyes closed. Knives flew past with a brilliance and could not touch him. The last knife flying past him was caught with incredible ease by his bare hand. He calmly looked at the examiner and asked if this was the whole test. Maybe there was another round next. Both examiners were in incredible shock. They could not believe that what they thought was an ordinary boy was able to catch a knife thrown by a master of might. Having looked at the form of the martial arts student, he was confident that he would have the highest score in the exam and gave it to him. When passing it back, a proposal for a joint response was put forward, which Wu Shuang did not dare refuse. The old man, pointing his finger to the side, told our hero to step into the area for the next test. The last test is to check the level of combat abilities. The point is to fight with wooden dolls. Wu Shuang, without hesitation, chose the most difficult level, which consists of fighting 4 dolls at once, which surrounded him and were ready to attack at any moment. The battle, as before, is observed by 2 examiners. The first says that even with the best estimates, this level of complexity is pure suicide, while the second, despite all the pity, is going to call someone to remove the corpse. The test requires you to show everything you are capable of, and even more. Even if you know the basic techniques, without something better, you will be in a bad position. According to the rules, the participant must hold out for 10 minutes, but since no one forbade these dolls to simply be broken, our hero deflects the doll's blow with a slight movement of his hand, and turning around with one precise, fast, and strong blow filled with internal energy, he smashes the doll to smithereens. The examiners opened their mouths in surprise. It seemed to them that it was all a dream. They watched as Wu Shuang's heavy blows smashed the dolls to pieces one after another without changing their expression. After an incredibly short period of time, the last attacking doll was destroyed with a direct blow filled with powerful energy. Lowering his eyes, our hero calmly asked for forgiveness. Next, standing surrounded by broken dolls, he directed his gaze at the examiners and clarified whether he needed to stand on the site for the remaining time until the end of the exam. The surprised old people, saying that this was not needed, called him to them. Having received the highest marks in all tests, he left the examination site with a smile on his face. As soon as Wu Shuang left the site, the old man from the last test urgently ran with a report to the chief examiner. He asked what happened and why the rush. The chief said that he should remember that he was sent by the royal family, and he must be prepared for any unforeseen situations. But the old man shouted in panic that he could not be prepared for this, because the martial arts student had absolute marks. The old man with a tattoo on his head sighed and said that there was nothing wrong with this, because at least a couple of students had absolute marks. The examiner of course agreed, but mentioned that that student was able to destroy all the dolls. And here the chief examiner's surprise knew no bounds. He shouted loudly, opening his mouth. Having calmed down a little, he decided to clarify whether the old man had seen it all with his own eyes and instantly received a positive answer. The chief examiner gave the order to keep such results secret, and when the exam was over, to raise him to the 7th level. The old man, having accepted the instructions, took his leave. Let's move to a crowded square, where everyone is waiting for the first person to pass all stages of the exam to appear. When someone's appearance appeared on the threshold, people were surprised, because a little more than an hour had passed, and it was simply impossible. But the members of our hero's family were even more surprised. While the father's face showed surprise, the sisters showed sincere joy. Why were they surprised? Because Wu Shuang was the first to leave the exam, and they joyfully went to meet him across the entire crowded square. As soon as people saw that it was him, a guy from a poor family, everyone immediately thought that he was simply disqualified and sent home. Little sister immediately asked our hero how the exam went. He replied that everything was pretty good, and also mentioned that he urgently needed to talk to her. Just as they were about to leave, the freak Niu started shouting at our hero's back, asking how his magnificent son was doing. With stars in his eyes and enthusiasm in his voice, Wu Shuang replies that his so-called brother Niu Du should have finished by now. Niu Du himself at that moment, with his pants down and quiet pleas for help, gave up the ghost, somewhere among the trees. And while our hero, smiling, continued on his way, old Niu looked at his back incomprehensibly. All this was observed by Mr. Shu, who reproached Head Zhang for the unfulfilled order, and he, in turn, simply made excuses, saying there was a slight delay. Zhang was angry, not understanding what happened, and why that killer didn't show up with any news. Holding a butterfly on his finger, Shu mentioned that even a person at the true power level would not be able to pass the exam in less than 2 hours. In his opinion, if a son is not able to complete the exam, he is just a waste. He believes that the Qing family, which was able to exist in Luojiang for more than 400 years, has finally come to an end. Next, we will head to the hotel, where our hero's father cannot believe that his son passed everything while destroying all the dolls on the test. Wu Shuang confirmed everything, saying that this was not prohibited by the rules. And besides, the examiner, according to him, was not very worried, and immediately gave him the highest score. At this time, the sister asked her father what was wrong, and why he was so surprised. He told her that the test dolls were created based on the power level of the peak of true power. The father looked seriously at his son, and said that he had always believed him, even when he was just a child. But this time he wants a promise that his words are not a lie. Even if Wu Shuang was disqualified, it would not be a problem for Lian Shan. He is ready to become an ordinary citizen. The main character, realizing that his father is not so easy to convince, decides to show part of his strength by starting to emit incredible power, releasing his internal energy from his body. Of the tens of thousands of students, 9/10 were doomed to become non-entities for life. The rest were awarded a place and a level rating. Mostly people achieved the 3rd or 4th level of martial arts. Only a small handful can reach the 5th level of martial arts, which is a fairly average result. If they try hard, they can break through to the power of might stage. The 6th level of martial arts is quite high. It is likely that they will easily be able to break through to the stage of true power. The best is the 7th level of martial arts. From there, you can easily rise to the 6th level of true power. For families, the minimum requirement is to have a level 6 master. As for the 8th level, it is almost always only available to royal families. The day the results were announced came, and surprisingly, even a first-rank student was there. It was the familiar handsome Niu Du, who could not believe the results. The guys standing nearby laughed loudly that his results seemed to be a new record for the Buyue Kingdom. Unfortunately, at the top of the list was not our hero, it was Daxi Yan with the 8th level. Our hero was put in 7th place, which greatly surprised the guys looking at the results. But he was clearly not satisfied with this result. He felt that someone was greatly underestimating him. As Wu Shuang looked at the results, his attention was attracted by the name Daxi Yang. It meant power and glory. Since he sided with our hero the last time, that means he's also decent. Having finished looking at the results, he went to meet his friends, who were joyfully waiting for him. They rejoiced, shouting that his result was simply incredible. For them, the 7th level seemed unattainable. But Wu Shuang praised them in response and said that the guys were great because they were able to reach the 6th level. And when he left, 2 guys looked at his back, who could not believe that such an unremarkable-looking guy could stand on a par with children from rich families. While the guys were walking calmly talking, our hero's father and sister came out to meet them and asked if Wu Shuang had already seen his results. The main character immediately started talking to his sister, and his friends began to praise him in front of his own father. Hearing this, Lianshan began to remember the day when his son decided to demonstrate his strength. He was enveloped in golden energy, and strong gusts of wind were blowing in different directions. Our hero's sister even began to cover herself with her hand. Both of them were too stunned, and only Xu Er could say through her surprise that this internal energy was simply incredible. Now Lianshan silently watched his son. He is confident that the energy there was at least at the 9th level of martial arts, and that in the future he will easily be able to reach the peak of true power. While they were all talking calmly, they were interrupted by a loud shout, telling everyone to get out of the way. It was Elder Shu who was walking, who wanted to see the results, and his servant was shouting, dispersing everyone from their path. People, instead of reacting aggressively, on the contrary, admired that this is the great Shu family. Their young master is one of the 3 students of the 7th level. This is worthy of a rich family. Wu Shuang, who saw such a strange scene, could only say that this is the world of the strongest, and the weak have no choice but to admire the strong. Head Zhang, standing behind Shu, says that young Master Shu is below Daxi Yan in 7th place. The elder replies that this is very good, and the future of their family can be placed on his shoulders. But later, Zhang added with an embittered look that Qing Wu Shuang was also at the 7th level. Shu, with an indifferent look, asked if his words were accurate, and old Zhang confirmed it. Mr. Shu is confident that even if that poor man who is our hero is at the 7th level, he will not be a match for Shu Ting. He is confident that if they can cultivate their young master to the 4th level of true power by the age of 24, he will easily become the chosen one in this insignificant world. Shu is ready to give everything for this, and even his family, of course. If everything works out, he promises not to forget about all the families and aristocrats who helped him in this matter. Then a rider on a horse suddenly runs into the busy square and rushes towards the center through all the people standing in the way. A huge man in beautiful armor and a fiery helmet. He sits in the saddle of a proud fiery horse with a luxurious horn on its head. The horseman, looking around the area with his gaze, loudly asked the question who among the entire crowd was Qing Wu Shuang. People in the crowd recognized who this person was by the mark on his chest. He turned out to be a master of true power from the sacred land. Someone else added that even the lowest level master there is 7th. Elder Shu approached him and politely introduced himself with his hands folded in front of him. But the great horseman threw only a contemptuous look at Shu, ordering him to go far away using a rude form of the word. The face of the respected Mr. Shu was marred by an angry grimace, and the people behind laughed at him, saying that finally someone had put him in his place. On the other side, Wu Shuang approached the rider, and introducing himself, asked why such a respected man was looking for him. Taking out a beautiful envelope, he said that our hero was being invited to a banquet by the chief examiner of this test, and the envelope was an invitation to him. The crowd of onlookers screamed in surprise. They clearly did not expect such a great master to arrive just to invite a poor family to a banquet. On the other side of the crowd, the guys shouted that Wu Shuang was just something, and in general, in their opinion, it was impossible to be so unpredictable. First, he breaks through to the 7th level, and then the chief examiner himself invites him. Headjong panickedly tried to understand how this was possible, even from a poor man from sacred land. Shu told him that no one would dare pretend to be their man, so he would have to accept it. After calming down a little, Zhang again asked the question whether Qing Wushuang was definitely at the 7th level, to which Mr. Shu replied that there was an option in which his strength could be much higher. While our heroes headed their way, looking at their backs, he turned to Zhang and said that some people of the 7th level never achieve anything more. Tensely, Shu asked if the henchman understood his hint, to which he mentioned the killer who had not yet returned. He is afraid that he might be guarded by the Daxi family. The vile elder said that in the Buyue Kingdom, during a duel, it does not matter what happens to the opponent. Even if they kill each other, neither the Daxi family nor the Holy Land Masters will be able to say anything. Representative Zhang understands that his family is again being used to achieve personal goals. Shu, noticing the expression on his so-called partner's face, decided to tell him directly that if he could deal with the Qing family, he would receive 30% of their possessions. Everyone knows that the Qing were rich. They owned 4,000 acres of rich land, a huge oil factory, pastures, seafood lakes, and dozens of shops. Compared to the old Qing, all of today's rich families are no better than the poor. They are simply nothing. Hearing such numbers, Zhang immediately put on a nasty smile and asked what was required of him. Elder Shu demands only one thing from him, that it all end. He believes that the time has come for Zhang Yao, the eldest son of the head, to show himself in all his glory. We are transported to a VIP room in a hotel, where the chief martial arts examiner sits with a serious face and congratulates the head of Qing on such a wonderful son as our hero. Also at the table, in addition to the old man with a tattoo, the whole family of the main character, including himself, was sitting. Lian Shan clarified that it was all thanks to the intensive training and efforts of his son. The examiner looked at Wu Shuang and praised him, calling him the most persistent student in Luojiang province. He knew that he trained every day on Mount Sung with a face full of determination. He asked not to be surprised by our hero, because according to him, in the entire Buyue Kingdom, there are not many things that the masters of the sacred land do not know about. Smiling, Wu Shuang raised his cup and said that when they see one of the masters of the sacred land, those rich old men lose their breath, to which the old man replied that a master of absolute martial arts in any country means the highest strength and power. Then the examiner interrupted the cheerful conversation with a serious question whether our hero had ever heard of the world of spirits. At this moment, Qing Lianshan, abruptly jumping up from the table, asked a counter-question about the veracity of the existence of the spirit world. Wu Shuang asked his father what kind of world this was. Frowning, he told his son that there are legends that say that the world of spirits is beyond their world. In that legendary world, there are countless powerful fighters who have gone beyond the power of their world. They are the true masters of the entire universe. There are rumors that everyone who managed to reach the 4th level of true power by the age of 24 is called gifted. Even the inhabitants of the spirit world themselves will definitely pay attention to such incredible talents. Sometimes they condescend to this world in order to take some gifted ones with them to their cultivation world. In our hero's world, such a connection is called spiritual. After taking a sip of the now cooled tea, Wu Shuang's father ended his story by saying that such a precious opportunity comes once every 10 years. The chief examiner decided to ask why Lian Shan was so excited by the mention of the spirit world, to which he, putting down the cup, said that this was his childhood dream. But alas, he had to fight for the class of a poor family. The old man told the head not to despair, because he has a wonderful son who is a genius. Looking at our hero, he briefly and clearly said that he was the chosen one. After finishing the conversation, Wu Shuang and his family said goodbye to the elder, and everyone went their separate ways. While they were walking, Xuer decided to ask her father why, despite all the praise from the examiners, her brother was only given the 7th level. Lian Shan said that the 7th level is the maximum for poor-class families. But Wu Shuang had a different answer for his sister. He told her that his scores were lowered in order to save society from mental trauma due to humiliation. Then the examiner asked the same question, telling the chief examiner that neither he nor the others understood why the guy did not have the highest score. Watching the Qing family member leave, the old man said that only sharpened jade can become a weapon. Returning to the hotel, he added that he hopes for our hero and his service to the Buyue Kingdom. And his last word was to hide all the information about Wu Shuang, so that even the slightest part would not be able to get into the open world. As our heroes walked down the street, their attention was attracted by a girl from a restaurant who was loudly shouting about discounts inside their establishment. Noticing his sister's gaze, the main character asked if she would like to have a snack there, to which she laughed awkwardly. Lian Shan told his children to go there together, since he still needs to prepare in assessing families. He will wait for them at the hotel. At Wu Shuang's command, they headed inside in hopes of a delicious lunch. On the way, our hero thought how good it was that he did not warn his father about the registration, which he had already completed. By the way, he enrolled them in the rich class. The girl at the entrance asked what the guests wanted. Wu Shuang asked to serve them the best they could feed. She politely replied that their best dish was the delicate spicy crab, which cost only 200 yuan each. Our hero immediately ordered 8 pieces. Having led our heroes to the table on which there were already several cans of wine, the girl said to wait a little. While Wu Shuang was telling his sister about the taste of the local crabs, several more characters came to the restaurant. The girl, in a slight panic, quickly approached them and asked what they wanted to order. Our hero immediately recognized the new visitors. They were Xu Yuan and Zhang Yao, the older brothers of those guys who bullied him at the academy. Zhang Yao, as expected, asked that Wu Shuang's table be given to him, and he also wanted to get all the crabs. The girl wanted to say that it is impossible to drive away guests, even if they are from the poor class. But Elder Zhang pointed towards Xu Yuan and introduced him. In addition to belonging to a rich family, he is also one of the 7 young masters of Luojiang province. She silently asked for someone to help her. In her opinion, even if a person is from a poor class, he is not worthy of humiliation. She anxiously approached Wu Shuang's table and was just about to start talking when he interrupted her, saying that he didn't want to hear another word and wasn't going to leave until he tasted his crab. Xiu began to worry and tried to stop her brother with requests. Give the crab to those people and leave quickly. She was very worried about him. Our hero, looking at his sister, decided to explain to her that if they give up their dish now, then later they will come not for food, but for their land. Zhang Yao spoke in front of Wu Shuang, saying that the gentleman behind him wanted to eat the mountain of crabs in his place, and it was his responsibility. The hero's sister knew that wealthy class families have advantages in such situations, but something still moved her at this moment. She stepped in front of her brother, which surprised him by the way, and indignantly said that even if the Qing are of the poor class, their family is still aristocrats, and the arrogant guys have no right to demand anything from them. Zhang looked at the girl with a disgusting look and said that she was quite brave and also cute. Next he asked a tactless question about marriage. Wu Shuang began to get angry, and Xu Er, a little embarrassed, called that trash a complete insolent. Noticing this, he looked at her with a smile and said that he had guessed about her employment, and invited her to marry his master. Zhang Yao turned to Xu Yuan and asked if he was interested in such a rarely seen cutie. Our hero's eyes instantly filled with a thirst for murder. He was about to rush towards the impudent guy. But suddenly and unexpectedly, out of nowhere, the figure of a different guy with blonde hair appeared. He had a mask on his face. In an instant, he was next to Zhang Yao and gave him a rather strong slap in the face. After such a well-aimed blow, he was thrown back to the entrance to the establishment. People in the path of Yao flying head over heels had to jump in different directions. That masked stranger looked coldly in the direction of the one who had flown away, calling both him and Shu's son arrogant brats. Xu Yuan had no words when he saw this man. He could only watch silently with his mouth open. At first, our hero and his sister also had no words to describe the situation, so they just watched. Zhang Yao, clutching his cheek, raised his head and with an angry expression on his face asked who dared to hit him. In front of him stood the stranger whose identity was finally revealed to us. This is Daxi Ming, and he is the first among the 7 young masters. Daxi Ming turned his chilling gaze towards Xu Yuan, asking whether he was truly worthy of his place among the 7 young masters. Xu Sr. tried to justify himself to the leader of the 7 who appeared out of nowhere, blaming everything on a misunderstanding on the part of the so-called hillbilly who has no manners. But Ming replied that he heard the entire conversation. But he continued to blame everything not only on our hero, but also on Zhang Yao, saying that it was his initiative to teach the boy a lesson. Their dialogue was interrupted by the loud laughter of Wu Shuang, who then said that he did not expect anything different from the brothers, and Yuan was as impudent as Ting. Xu Yuan was infuriated by the words of the protagonist, and he looked at him furiously and suggested that he go out and sort it out on the street. Daxi Ming, without changing his view, made a promise that from this very moment, anyone who offends an innocent person will deal with him personally. The poor fellow was immediately struck by the thought that meeting Ming was incredible bad luck. While Xu Yuan left saying that our hero was lucky, Zhang Yao shouted that next time he would definitely kill him as a sacrifice to his younger brother. And then Wu Shuang says that he is not afraid of the Daxi family, so there is no point in them being afraid or waiting. At this moment, Xu Yuan's mood changed. Asking Ming for forgiveness, he was ready to kill our hero. The leader of the 7 couldn't believe that someone from a family like the Qings would turn such an enemy against themselves. Wu Shuang thanked Daxi Ming for interceding, but he still intends to resolve the conflict that arose so long ago. The main character, challenging the arrogant guys, asks Mr. Duxi to be the judge of their duel, adding that God will be a witness. He called it children, looked at Xu Er and asked if she agreed that he make such a decision alone. The little one remembers that her brother's strength surpassed her father's, so a one-on-one duel would not be a problem. She gives her full consent. Daxi Ming didn't understand why everyone thought such a kid was special, and he was also angry, believing that his brother and older sister didn't understand what they were getting themselves into. He decided that Xu Yuan, who had reached the first level of true power, would be too difficult an opponent for the main character, so he decided to pit Zhang Yao against him. He had no objections. He was completely confident in his superiority over the boy. The street in front of the restaurant was quite crowded. Life went on as usual. People were busy with their own affairs. Our active characters also came to her. Zhang Yao had a blade in his hand while Wu Shuang stood without any weapon. Spectators had already gathered around their duel and recognized them. They believed that our hero was too arrogant, running into a master of the peak of power with only the 7th level. The girl was very worried about her brother, even knowing his strength, so she asked him to be careful. Wu Shuang looked at his sister with a bright smile and said not to worry, because he could easily teach such a pitiful dog a lesson. The crowd perked up after such a powerful provocation. They believed that he would have every chance to reach the peak of power. But unfortunately, he challenged such a master. Taking a fighting stance, Zhang Yao's blade began to emit a pale aura, and it was with this that he promised to cut Wu Shuang into 2 pieces. The main character asked if those words were his last, and after the words about the beginning, he began to collect energy in his hand, preparing to carry out an attack. Daxi Ming, who was watching the battle, did not understand what our hero was doing and was ready to intervene in the battle at any moment. Having finished his thoughts, he announced the beginning of the duel with a movement of his hand. Zhang Yao was the first to rush towards our hero, eager to avenge his younger brother. He was full of killing intent. While he was getting closer and closer, Wu Shuang did not react at all, but simply stood watching his opponent flying towards him. He raised his eyes filled with anger at him, preparing to launch a counterattack. Xu Yuan at this time was also expecting the boy's death, since he had repeatedly bothered him. Xu was very scared for her brother, and Daxi Ming thought that he would not have time to evade and it was too late to do something. Looking full of confidence, Zhang Yao is ready to strike. Wu Shuang spread his hands right in front of the blade flying at him, which seems to be able to cut even a mountain. Even when the blade was already right in front of his face, his eyes were filled with coldness. He said that such a flimsy blade would not hurt him. And immediately after such self-confident words, our hero, raising his hand up, broke the blade into multiple fragments. Zhang Yao's face was filled with surprise and confusion, his hand trembling due to the recoil from Wu Shuang's punch. The blade shattered behind him into smaller and smaller fragments. The next second, our hero pointed his index finger towards the opponent's head. At the tip of which the energy was concentrated, it easily passed through the guy's head. Xu Yuan was incredibly scared by such a terrible event. His emotions are simply impossible to describe. Xiu'er and Daxi Ming's faces were also suddenly filled with surprise and misunderstanding of the situation. Zhang Yao's lifeless body fell at Xu Yuan's feet, which surprised everyone. But one death was not enough for Wu Shuang. He looked furiously at Xu Yuan, holding a finger filled with internal energy in front of him, and asked whether he agreed to be next. The onlookers were also in indescribable shock. They could not believe their eyes, in which a master from a wealthy family was killed. Xu Yuan, looking at the body of his fallen acquaintance, could not believe that someone could defeat him with one finger, when he himself could not do the same, even in a few movements. Sweat started pouring down his face. He was incredibly scared. His head was mixed with different thoughts, and he had no idea what to do next. The power of our hero at that moment seemed simply incommensurable to him. In Xu Yuan's eyes, he looked like a real monster, capable of killing him at any second with a snap of his fingers. Daxi Ming also couldn't believe that a simple student could do such a thing. But since he was the judge, he had no choice but to ask Xu Yuan whether he would accept the fight after Zhang Yao. Wu Shuang hurried him, saying that he only had 2 choices, and to be more precise, he could save face and die or live, but lose his reputation. He clenches his fists and through anger decides to accept the fact that the main character is stronger than himself. Turning around, Xu Yuan left the scene of the latest events, but fear and a feeling of humiliation did not leave him. Wu Shuang looked at Zhang Yao's body and wondered if his immobility meant death, but a satisfied little sister walked towards him. Daxi Ming praised him, saying that he was able to make an impression. Our hero in response only said that Xu Yuan is a much more slippery dog than the son of the Zhang family. The guy confirmed that Yuan really ran with his heels shining without showing it, and also added that our hero is unlikely to be able to fight with him again. Wu Shuang asked why this was so and whether it was because of his father. But Daxi Ming said that it was not entirely true, because he had discredited the name of Prince Seven and the others. Our hero, knowing that the guy next to him was the leader among the 7 princes, decided to ask if he felt shame for his comrade. Daxi Ming replied that Prince of the 7 is just a name given to him by other people, but he himself is who he is. But Wu Shuang believes that this is the title his new acquaintance deserves, unlike Xu Yuan. Daxi Ming, considering our hero's words acceptable, decided to invite him to his house when he had time. He promised to meet him and his sister as expected. After they shook hands, Xiu Er entered the conversation and thanked the young man for everything he had done for them. Our new friend was a little embarrassed after the beauty's words, but tried not to show it. Then he called a girl from the establishment where they wanted to dine on crab. She handed our heroine a basket of crabs. Of course, she was embarrassed to accept it. And at that moment, Daxi Ming added that it would be a gift from him. She looked into his eyes with a slight hesitation and thanked him tenderly, accepting the pleasant basket. Then Daxi Ming spoke to the entire crowd and said that the duel was absolutely fair and he was a witness, and if anyone had any doubts, they would have to come to the Daxi family. Our next stop will be the Zhang family's big house. The unsuspecting head Zhang was walking along the corridor when suddenly he was stopped by the cry of a frightened servant, who was shouting in panic, something about the young master. The servant brought him sad news, from which his face was filled with horror. He could not have expected that his eldest son would be killed by the hands of the same man who killed the younger one. After the Zhang family's house, events moved to the Shu residence. Inside, something terrible was happening. Elder Shu beat his son Shu Yuan with a whip, who had disgraced the family by refusing to go out to fight. A servant who ran up from behind asked Shu Sihai to stop, since Yuan was already unconscious. But this did not suit him, and he demanded to know when he would wake up in order to continue the punishment. He was also dissatisfied with himself for underestimating the once great Qing family, the main arena of Luojiang province. It is here that families are assessed every 20 years. The evaluation of families is a hopeless struggle for the status of the family, which decides all the ups and downs in the future. There is also a way for ordinary people to rise. If a poor family wins over a rich one, their statuses will be reversed. Only one family can act as the leading nobility. Then come 3 rich classes, 8 respectable classes, and 26 poor classes. The highest status of leading nobles belongs to the Daxi family, as no one dares to rebel against them. The 3 rich classes are Shu, Yun, and Qian. Until our hero appeared, no one in Luojiang province could challenge them. That's when they met. On the left is the Qian family, in the middle is the Shu, and on the right is the Yun. Chief Yun proudly says that in his opinion this time he will not have a worthy opponent. Head Shu looks angrily at Yun and asks if he is really going to declare war on him. The head of the Yun family looked at him sadly, thinking that the old man did not understand jokes at all. The head of the Qin family intervened in their small squabble, saying that they should not start a fight at such a moment and in such a place. Next we have authoritative classes. Usually 1 or 2 changes can occur in them. What about the poor classes? About 4 of them will lose their seats, and just as many families of ordinary people will take them. Several people approached Head Shu, whom he called his cousins, and decided to push the showdown with the Qing family onto their shoulders, while he sat comfortably on a chair. A man began speaking in the center of the arena and said that he was glad to see such activity again after 20 years. He spoke into a strange microphone that he missed everyone, and he also thought it was wonderful to honor the old martial arts traditions of the Baiyu Kingdom. And it is the assessment of families that is one of those very traditions. According to him, this is also a great way to show your strength. With a scary smile and a strange expression on his face, the man announced the start of the competition for the places of the 2 poor classes. Those 2 places belong to the Li family from Judu City and the Qing family from Donglin City. A total of 5 families will compete for their places, the first being the Gu family. The second will be a family from Luojiang province, the Wang family. The third family came from Judu City and is the Lan seed. The fourth is all from the same Judu, the full Li family. And the 5th family turned out to be the already known and incredible Niyu family. After the announcement of the participating families, most of the people in the stands loudly discussed that the Qing family with a 1,000-year history had slipped generation after generation. Someone among the crowd decided to talk about the rumors that Qing was supported by the Daxi family, and then someone joked about their determination. For now, Li and Shan listened attentively to the presenter, trying not to pay attention to the ill-mannered youngsters. He had just begun to announce who would participate in the prestigious competition. And there was only one place. Unknown to us, the Xia family is challenging, attention to whom? And this is again the Zhou family, unknown to us. They will act as opponents for Xia. Loud arguments began in the stands. Everyone knew about the eternal enmity of those 2 families, but everyone considered the winner different. As soon as people started shouting that this would be absolutely uninteresting, the presenter asked for a moment of attention, because today they would also be able to witness the battle for a place in the rich class. He looked around the stands with his intriguing gaze, asking who they thought would fight. The spectators' mouths opened. They could not imagine that someone so brave would appear to fight with rich families who have held their positions for hundreds of years. They were torn with interest to find out who would fight, but to the father of the main character, something seemed suspicious. Head Yun also had a higher level of interest in the family that dared to challenge the rich. He took a long time to answer, but still, opening his mouth wide and taking in more air, he said that the great Shu family from Luojiang province was being summoned, which not only surprised them, but also confused them to some extent. And who challenged them? I think everyone has already guessed by the smile of the main character. That's right, the challenge is from the Qing family from Donglin City. While Wu Shuang was smiling, the sister was surprised and began to panic, and the father's heart almost sank. This surprised even the princess of the Yun family. She did not expect to hear such a familiar name. In the stands, everyone went completely crazy and started shouting that the Qing were crazy to skip the level. And besides, they were immediately challenging Shu. Head Yun even stood up from his seat to praise the Qing family for such ambitions, and his daughter even offered to clap for them. But he answered her that she shouldn't laugh, because this is precisely the basis and aspiration of all fighters. With words about the victory of the strongest, the presenter loudly suggested moving on to the next stage. With a joyful smile, he asked all the families to come on stage to sign the agreement. The so-called agreement is actually a life-or-death renunciation signature, and must be signed by everyone involved. The 4 families would fight against the 5 poor families, and the Gu, Wen, and Niu families would fight instead of the Qing while they fought the Shu. Absolutely all families who agreed with the conditions entered the arena full of determination. Head Shu decided to give a rather pathetic speech, saying that anyone who stands in their way will cease to exist. He is completely ready to trample any enemy, so he proudly steps forward. Here our hero appears on the stage and begins to tell a story about a rich old man who came from a rich family, but he was very greedy. He wanted to take everything away from another family. While Shu watched him indifferently, he continued that the old man threatened with everything he could, so that that family would surrender and give everything to him. Wu Shuang, addressing all the spectators in the stands, everyone who lives in the world of martial arts, he asked whether it was possible to give up without a fight. And then he began to shout in earnest, with full confidence, what would happen to those who surrendered. Any such person, according to him, will be tainted for life. Even while uttering such a loud speech, not a single muscle flinched on his face. Head Yun was excited and pleasantly surprised by such a speech, but his daughter was simply surprised. The protagonist's friends also watched everything, and were also very surprised, because they did not expect this from him. While everyone was surprised, Wu Shuang began to demonstrate the power of his internal energy, while simultaneously saying that today, he would take the place of that same old man for himself. Chief Shu knew that only people from the family can participate in the evaluation of families, so the Daxis would not be able to help our hero. His thoughts were interrupted by the host, who said that there was still one rule that specifically affected his family. Everyone knows that if the Qing family can defeat the Shu, then they will be demoted to the poor class. But this is where that rule comes in. Since the Qing are giving up their place, then if the Shu are defeated, they will fall to the ordinary citizens. But Head Shu was only insulted by such words, since he believed that his great family would not lose to anyone. Let's move on to the rules. To determine a place in a poor class, 1 battle will be needed. To determine places in an authoritative class, 3 battles and 5 battles for a rich one. The presenter was interested in one important point. According to his information, only 2 people can fight in the Qing family, so he asked our hero about this, to which he gave an amazing answer, mentioning the rule that allows 1 person to take on all the fights. Xu Er and Lian Shun were surprised by such a sharp answer. There was also silence in the stands for a moment. This answer surprised everyone very much. The presenter was also surprised and decided to remind you that although there is such a rule, with each battle your opponents will become twice as many. But the main character was not afraid of such moments. He said with a smile on his face that since there is such a rule, then he will have to follow it. Head Shu continued to underestimate our hero. He is sure that he is not capable of anything without the help of the Daxi family. The presenter at this time announced the beginning of the assessment of families, and today there will be a competition for the poor class. The first to enter the arena were the Gu family, whose opponents were the Niu family. These 2 families of commoners will fight for a place in the poor class. Chief Niu knew that the Gus were related to the Shus, so the thought crossed his mind to simply give up. People in the stands had already begun to place bets. Some were betting on Gu, while others were leaning more towards Niu. Lian Shan now has only one thing to worry about, namely, that the Qing family was summoned by so many people that the ancestors must have become completely ashamed. But Wu Shuang asked his father not to worry about anything, because this time he intends to return both status and dignity to his family. Despite all his son's words, he still had doubts. He was sure that at that age, no matter how hard he tried, he would not be able to achieve true power. It's a shame he doesn't know yet. He decides to ask his son if it is possible that something unusual happened to him. Wu Shuang, looking carefully at his father, thought that if rebirth in another world after death, as well as the appearance of a new father and sister, can be considered unusual, then he is completely right. He decides to tell his father that something strange and interesting at the same time really happened to him. But even if he told him, he would hardly be able to believe it. But he can still promise one main thing, that his further actions will not discredit either his ancestors or the gods. Lian Shan accepted this answer, and with pride in his voice said that he would no longer worry, and would also support his son in all actions with the Qing family. At this time, a meeting was held in the Shu house, at which their head made a speech to family members. He prepared them for battle. He continued to say that hundreds of years had passed since the Shu family's rise to the rich class. They had already passed 6 family assessments, and still maintained their status. At the end of his speech, he added that regardless of the opponent, their motto does not change. His main idea is to fight like lions until the enemy is destroyed. The entire family proudly shouted that they were the best and invincible, even the bandaged Shu Wan. The head's brother, Shu Sihai, said that everyone understands everything and is ready to put their lives on the line at any cost. They are ready to do anything to break their opponents. The head agreed with his words and said that the honor and prestige of the family is at stake, which is why anyone who takes part in the battle must be determined to kill their opponent. A muscular man with a huge, heavy sword that easily breaks stones just under its own weight. He easily threw it over his shoulder and asked the head of the family to give him the right to compete in the first fight. Head Shu gave his consent, asking him to trample all hopes by killing his opponent. Also turning his back, he added that their boat had almost returned to Nianyang Prefecture. Next, let's see what happens on the estate of the ruling Daxi family. In one of the rooms, the head of the Daxi family is playing Go with some old man, who is interested in whether the rumor is true that the Shu family has recently begun to decline. The head says that the Shu family has become too arrogant and self-sufficient, and that sooner or later problems would overtake them anyway. Making his move, he adds that this time something unexpected stood in their way. The old man was amused by this answer, because this is the first time that someone has challenged a family that is 2 levels above them. By the way, the old man is called Uncle Shi. The head continued that the boy from the Qing family is not as simple as he might seem. Such words interested the old man. Making his move again, he says that his son told him about a case 2 days away. How an ordinary 7th level jelly killed a warrior at the peak of his power in a couple of seconds. The old man was very surprised by this and asked if it was a joke. But the head said that Ming-er is not one of those who will talk no matter what. Dadi Shu just had a question about Daxi Ming. The old man, making his move in the game, called him a poor child and asked if he had decided to return to his family. It was the head's turn to make a move, and while he was thinking about it, he continued that it was time for Ming to understand that he would have to face something unknown to us in any case. He further added that he heard how he spotted the daughter of the Qing family. The head is afraid that his son is plotting something again. The old man, making his move, says that the head should carefully monitor him, because Ming never has something on his mind for no reason. But suddenly a wide smile appeared on the head's face and he said that his uncle had started talking. For having made the last move, he doomed himself to defeat, and the head, with joyful cries, having made that very move, began to laugh contentedly. Then let's return to the Qing family, and more specifically to the hotel where they temporarily stayed. Wu Shuang was sitting in the lotus position in his room, and in his 2 hands there were clots of energies from different techniques. One was hot like fire, the other was freezing like deep frost. Our hero, without a bit of a doubt, tried to unite together these 2 incompatible energies, which, when they collided, began to strongly resist each other. But another setback overtook him, and an explosion occurred again, which was accompanied by the dissipation of both types of energy. The main character carefully examined the energies of the 2 techniques, saying that he did not have enough time to successfully combine them. He also told us their names. These turned out to be the well-known technique of True Inferno and the blows of 9 suns. There are only 2 days left until his first fight. He should not be afraid of anything, but he cannot become ruthless. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door of the room, and the man standing behind it called out to him. It was his father who came with an important conversation. He went up to the window and said that in his opinion they should abandon the fight and admit defeat in the competition. Wu Shuang was not very pleased with such a conversation. He was afraid that his father was still afraid of falling even lower. But still, everyone knows what our boy is capable of. Lian Shan, trying to explain his decision, says that the Exu family is good at making plans, and he also mentions rumors that talk about their connection with the southern heavenly city, in which they are sucking up to the local authorities. He doesn't know what kind of tricks the Shu family might have in store, so he's afraid that something irreparable might happen to his son, and suggests they wait another 20 years for him. Wu Shuang, looking out the window, says that he is not afraid, because those families, despite all their power, will not be able to resist the sacred land of Zhongwu. According to our hero, in this kingdom the Qing have a chance to win until the sacred land orders their destruction. He looked at his father with a smile on his face and asked to believe him. He promises that he will return the family to its former greatness, and the entire province of Luojiang will know about them. Their conversation was interrupted by a sister running into the room, joyfully calling her father with some message in her hands. Lian Shan asked why his daughter was so happy, It turned out that Mr. Daxi had sent an invitation to a party in honor of Mrs. Daxi's birthday. She hopefully asked her father to let them in, but our hero's attention was attracted by the fact that she called Daxi Ming brother. Having read the invitation, he said that they simply did not have the right to refuse, because an invitation from such a great family in itself was simply an amazing event. Wu Shuang also agreed with his father's words, so he suggested setting off. At this time, the entire Shu family was welcoming guests. What kind of guests were they? Even the head himself came out to meet. It turns out it was Hemin Qian and his escort. He is the son of a certain Shimin family. The head of the family, Shu Sanli, folded his hands in front of him and respectfully called the guest young master and said that he was glad to meet him. Hemin Qian is a warrior of the 6th level of true power, and one of the accompanying Shimin is 13th Ying, who was also at the 6th level of true power. The children of the family thought that the son Simon was too arrogant, because the head personally met him, and he did not even get off his horse. The second added that he could not have power higher than their elder. Shu Sihai turned to them and said that they should shut their mouths if they want to live, because Shimin Qian is the first among the fighters of the younger generation of the Shimin family. Looking at his back, he told his family members that he was a powerful warrior of the 6th level of true power. Inside the estate, he began looking at various books and asked a simple question about Daxi Ming and his relationship with a woman from a poor family. Head Shu said that all this was true, and he really had a connection with her. He thought that this time the Daxis would not be able to help Qing. Because of his anger, the book in his hand was crushed. He mentioned that the Simon family highly valued Daxi Ming and therefore promised him Qian's sister. He quickly switched to another topic and mentioned that a presumptuous family had appeared and challenged Shu. When leaving, his last words were that he hoped for Shu's victory, because Hemin did not do business with losers. Chief Shu's face began to break out in a nervous sweat as he did not dare to answer the question under such pressure. At this time, Wu Shuang and Xu Er were walking around the jewelry shops, choosing a gift for Mrs. Daxi, because coming to such a family without a gift would be arrogant disrespect. My sister wanted to choose the best gift she could. The saleswomen looked down on our heroes, calling them hillbillies and saying that they hated them the most. Wu Shuang said with disappointment that he did not expect to see such a meager selection in the so-called best jewelry province of Luojiang. None of the goods provided could be given to a respected person. One of the saleswomen approached them, saying that they had a better product, but it was intended for richer aristocrats. In the end, she added that she did not intend to humiliate them at all, but in her opinion, they still wouldn't be able to afford it, so she just chuckled. Little Xu Er, saying that they were looking for a gift, demanded to see a better product, but this bitch continued to smirk at them, saying that high-quality goods are only for aristocrats above the poor class. Wu Shuang was very angry at such a disrespectful form of communication, and he could barely contain himself and told his sister to quickly leave this lousy store. The saleswoman began to cower with fear, because part of the power had leaked out anyway. But then the daughter of the Yun family appears, who, turning to Wu Shuang, says that he's only good at bullying girls. She was in the campaign of her friends. In their presence, her dirty mouth continued to call our hero derogatory names. They are very arrogant. Continuing her monologue, questions kept coming out of her. She was wondering if he cheated on the exam, and also her confidence about the theft incident at the academy and his involvement in it reached its maximum. The main character only smiled sarcastically, provoking the arrogant girl to do something. This arrogant girl could not understand why a loser who was beaten to a pulp 4 years ago became so arrogant, and even dared to challenge the rich class. Deciding to test what Wu Shuang really was, she gathered energy in her hand and rushed towards him at full speed. But our hero had already come up with some plan, because he stood motionless and simply smiled. His head did not even turn towards the attacker. At the last moment, he easily dodged, watching as the blow of the uncomprehending girl from Yun broke the rack with accessories. Apparently, she didn't care much about this. She didn't care about her surroundings because her goal was to get to our hero. She turned her body and sent another blow towards the protagonist, without thinking about the consequences. Wu Shuang dodged all the attacks that were continuously directed towards him, but instead of him, everyone around him inside the jewelry store suffered. Stands with goods one after another flew into pieces. While the girl did not pay attention to it, Wu Shuang, who understood everything, simply smiled. When the blows stopped, Yun said that our hero should stop dodging if he has even a drop of masculinity. But he looked down on her and decided to open her eyes by calling out to her. Opening her arms, Wu Shuang invites her to look around and think about how many problems she caused to the jewelry store, which was almost completely destroyed by her hands. Our hero called his sister and they left the arrogant girls who had extra troubles. She shouted after him that he fought her. In my opinion, it is not even worth mentioning. But the main character, still with the same smile on his face, suggested that the young miss should better think about compensation. While one of the girls was calming down our rowdy girl so that she would cool down, The girl standing behind with a veil on her face watched with interest as Wu Shuang left. Let's move on to the Daxi family. The head of the family and his eldest son, Daxi Ming, are standing on the balcony of the pavilion. Ming asked for what purpose his father called him to him. The head of Daxi asked if Ming invited the Qing family as he ordered. Daxi Ming gave him a positive answer. Then he told his son that He Qian had already arrived, and the future of the Daxi family might depend on Ming, and he would also have to choose what to do on his own. It turns out that He Qian is one of the 4 Scarlet Warriors. One day, he told the Lord of Redwood how to deal with 100,000 barbarians from the north. He became the first in the younger generation, and was already able to lead his family. The Emperor himself even met with him. He also has a nasty sister who forces Daxi Ming to marry her. He is not going to give in to their family for anything, because he just wants to be with the one he loves. He will stick to his point of view even if he has to go to war. Saying that the banquet was about to begin, the head of the family left Daxi Ming and went to prepare to welcome the guests. As soon as the banquet began, Daxi Ming immediately began to be surrounded by other children from wealthy class families. The same 3 girls stood near him. The first of them tried to talk to the young master Daxi, but he was silent. After the ladies, the children of the Shu family, Shu Zhou, who are at the 3rd level of true power, and Shu Yuan, already known to us, approached him. But the same fate awaited them. They were ignored, and this felt like an unprecedented humiliation. This angered Shu Zhou, and mentally he called him names, saying that their family is at least stronger than the others, and he has no right to ignore people like them. Something suddenly caught the attention of our princess from the Yun family. Wu Shuang and his sister walked proudly into the hall filled with guests, and with their appearance they attracted everyone's attention. Daxi Ming immediately came to meet them, who most likely went out into the main hall just for them. The guests looked at this scene with surprise, because few people knew what kind of guests forced Ming to come out in person. But someone suggested that it was the Qing family. Some didn't understand how such aristocrats could invite a poor family to a party, but some knew about Daxi Ming's rapprochement with Qing's daughter. Shu Zhou asked Shu Yuan if this is the guy who killed Zhang Yao in a couple of seconds, pointing at our hero. Our hero's conversation was interrupted by the daughter of the Yun family, who abruptly called him by name. The main character looked at her and suggested that young Miss Yun had come looking for a fight again, but she said that she didn't come for that. In fact, she just asked around that jewelry store after everything that happened, and with the same arrogant look she decided to apologize even without looking her in the eyes. Our hero, turning away, said that although her words did not look like an apology, since he was very generous, he decided to forgive her. While Shu Er and Daxi Ming watched everything from the side, Wu Shuang covered his ears with his fingers and tried not to listen, as she talked about her exploits of conquering proud guys like him. Loud conversations were interrupted by words of gratitude, depending sharply sounded from the far side of the pavilion. It was the main star of the party, Daxi Yue, the young lady of the family, who hopes that all the guests will have fun. Some guests began to evaluate the birthday girl, saying that for a girl from a rich family, she was not bad. Daxi Ming called his sister to come closer because he wanted to introduce our heroes to her. While they were talking, Daxi's daughter praised our hero and said that she had often heard his name from her brother. Simon Qian came to the party and, covering his face with a fan, said that it was quite lively. Daxi Ming reacted negatively to the appearance of such a character because he was not invited. With a nasty smile on his face, and of course accompanied by him, he folded his fan, intending to say something. One of the guests knew the Shiman family and that they were the only big aristocratic family in the southern heavenly country. That guy was interested in how they would deal with the Daxi family without even being invited. He turned to Daxi Ming, saying that judging by his reaction, he was not very happy to see him. Daxi Ming without hesitation covered Shu Er with himself and said that he understood everything correctly and was really not welcome to see him at this event. He Qian, noticing this, immediately mentioned the rumors about his rapprochement with the poor girl, and, looking at the one behind Ming, asked if it was she who was standing by chance. He continued to smile disgustingly while looking at our hero's sister, saying that she was not so bad and he also wanted to try her, so to speak. Daxi Ming tried to cover the girl with his whole body, not giving him a chance to come closer to her. Wu Shuang, unable to bear such words, stood in front of him and, looking at him warningly, said not to approach. This behavior angered the arrogant bastard, and he made a face in anger. Without thinking twice, he decides to intimidate our hero by releasing his internal energy, which is worthless in comparison with his, which, taking the form of some kind of demon, pressed forward in all directions. The girl standing nearby, and the guests behind, could barely stand under the pressure of such powerful energy. But such weak energy had no effect on Wu Shuang, because he was much stronger than that arrogant son. The daughter of the Yun family was incredibly surprised that such a powerful ejection not only did not hurt Wu Shuang, but also did not hurt him at all. Daxi Ming suddenly rushed towards He Qian, saying that he had no right to behave like this in his family. But Simon didn't listen to anything. Everything didn't matter to him. His only goal was to kill our hero. Wu Shuang, realizing that his opponent was serious, gathered energy in his hand and began to attack. Emeil Qian was also about to strike a counterblow with a smile on his face. He was completely confident in his victory. But their attacks were stopped by the head of the Daxi family, who appeared out of nowhere, who grabbed the hands of both culprits and easily stopped the fight. Emeil Qian was not very pleased with the appearance of the head in his thoughts, the interfering old man. What surprised Wu Shuang more was that the old man was able to absorb and dispel the force of his blow. The head of Daxi said that Mr. Emeil was causing him trouble while his hand trembled from the force of our hero's blow. Emeil Qian asked why the head got nervous during a simple warm-up. He mentioned that the elder had already agreed to the marriage contract and reminded that there would be serious consequences if he refused it. The head of Daxi replied that when time passes, everything will go smoothly. When leaving, he also did not forget to say that everyone already knows Daxi's connection with the poor class, and the Simon family will not simply leave such an unacceptable situation unresolved. The head of Daxi directly asked what this impudent young master wanted. But this idiot said that either the Daxi family or the Qing family should disappear as if they never existed. The guests were stunned by such an unexpected statement and did not understand how everything came to this. The words of the arrogant boy from Simon were repeated with a grin by the same family assessment leader from the Sacred Land, who, by the way, came along with the chief examiner from the same Sacred Land. The two guys from the Xu family immediately recognized the new guests and were quite shocked. The presenter decided to ask how he was going to make his family disappear. He was really interested in it. Emeil Qian was very tense. He never expected to see such important people at this event, and his attendant sincerely apologized, blaming it all on a bad joke. But the presenter continued to put pressure on them, saying that he felt an arrogant attitude that was not like a joke. Still arrogantly, the scion of the Simon family answered him that whether it was a joke or not would be clarified a little later. Wu Shuang intervened in their conversation and said that Emeil Qian should thank Elder Daxi, since he saved his lousy life. He glared at our hero, promising that he would have to pay for everything that happened. Wu Shuang, still with the same wide smile, said that he would wait impatiently. While the impudent Simons were leaving the event, the people of the Sacred Land approached our hero. The old man approached him, saying that this time he was not able to establish the best relationship with the Simon family, in response to which Wu Shuang, pushing him with his elbow, said that it was all thanks to one guy who came on time. This act greatly surprised the presenter standing next to him, and at that time the head of Daxi was looking at his hand, which was trembling after our hero's blow. Having said goodbye, the people of the Sacred Land left the pavilion, and the presenter said that, in his opinion, the old man liked that boy, and all because anyone who calls him uncle should be killed on the spot, to which the old man replied that he should have already killed the leader. So, the presenter said that he had dug up information about the Qings and began the story with the fact that their ancestors came from other countries. Hundreds of years ago, a huge number of elite scions suddenly disappeared, causing a loss in the ranking of families. After that moment, their family fell apart. If they hadn't lost all their precious techniques now, they might not be in such a dire situation. He also added at the end that our hero shows great promise. In his opinion, everyone sees the current battle between the Qing family and the Shu family as just some kind of prank, but he is interested in the old man's opinion. The chief examiner said with a serious face that if Shu did not have any aces up her sleeve, they would face a crushing defeat in this battle. The words about the crushing victory of the Qings incredibly surprised the presenter, who had not expected such a sharp answer. That night, after the party, everyone was returning home, and on the way, Wu Shuang asked what happened to his sister. Although he already understood everything, she was tired for now, thinking that Daxi Ming had already signed the marriage contract. Wu Shuang knew that the contract was forced, so he thought that since his sister finally fell in love, she would get it no matter what. But something distracted his attention from his thoughts, and throwing everything off on the remaining matters, he told his sister to go forward. An old man who was next to Emeil Qian watched them from a rooftop nearby and noticed that our hero had left. And since he's gone, it means it's the girl's turn, he thought, until he was interrupted by someone's voice. It was Wu Shuang, who, sitting next to the old man, asked if his sister was really beautiful. The old man jumped back, frightened, wondering when he managed to get so close. The main character asked who sent the old man. Surprised that the guy was able to silently get close to him, he gathered energy in his hand and was about to attack. But Wu Shuang, realizing that he would not hear anything from the old man, suggested ending everything. The old man was fully aware that our hero was much stronger than they expected, so he decided to kill him before it was too late. But before he had time to strike even one blow, Wu Shuang appeared in front of him in the blink of an eye, and grabbing his head with one hand, smashed the concrete part on the roof with it. The old man did not understand how he was stunned in one movement, because he was at the 6th level of true power. His eyes ran back and forth because of the fear he was experiencing at that moment. Wu Shuang, looking at him like an ordinary beetle, said that he would not even dare to look in the direction of his sister, and in any case, he would first turn directly to him. At this time, Himenqian, who was waiting at the hotel, was wondering what trump cards the Qing family had hidden since they decided to challenge the Shu family. He asked the head of Shu whether he had found out everything about them, to which he received an answer from him that their only trump card could be the secret family martial arts techniques. The next question from Himenqian was about Qing Wushuang's talent for cultivation. Chief Shu said that there was nothing unusual about him. He just trained a lot. He also mentioned that 4 years ago he was able to kill the youngest son of the Jiang aristocrats, and a couple of days ago he killed the eldest son. Shu continued to say that it was absolutely impossible for an ordinary student to be able to defeat someone at the peak of his power, and in both cases, the Daxi family was involved. He suggests that this was their secret help. But Himenqian said that this is all strange, because even with support from the Daxi family, they still cannot help them in the battle, and he does not understand why they dared to call the rich Shu family. Therefore, in order to understand everything, he suggested asking Mrs. Qing personally. She, in his opinion, could tell them a lot of useful things. He was suddenly pulled away by someone's voice calling out to him rudely, saying that he was returning his servant to him. The body of the old man accompanying Himenqian flew into the room through the window. The voice disappeared after saying that it would not be easy for the Heman family to survive from now on, and warned that they were making sure that hundreds of years of development would not be destroyed in an instant. The head of Shu Sanli, seeing the corpse of Shimen Ying, asked whether he should chase after that unknown person. Himenqian asked if Shu would like to go after the old man, if he was so eager to pursue. He told Chief Shu that Shimen Ying was at the 6th level of true power, and was also good at stealth killings. But despite all this, there was only one wound on his body, meaning that he was killed in one move. From this, he deduced that the killer was around the 8th level of true power. Frowning, he said that neither Qing's father nor son could have such power, and neither could Daxi Ming. He asked Shu Sanli who was the best warrior in Luojiang province. According to him, this is Daxi Heng, but he should only be at the 7th level of true power. Himenqian said quietly that he was already quite tired of old man Daxi. After all the events, 10 days flew by in an instant. During this time, the battles between poor and established families ended. Some lost and some succeeded. In the end, the Gu family won the Qing family's seat without much difficulty, forcing the new family to raise the white flag. There was a fierce battle between the two enemies for second place in the poor class. The victory went to the Lan family, defeating the Li family. In the battle for the position of the authoritative Zhou family, which is known as the strongest poor family, they defeated the Xia family, which from time immemorial lived in the authority class. And now the long-awaited battle for a place in the rich class. Crowds have gathered in the stands waiting for it to begin. Everyone gathered to watch the battle. At the top places was Himenqian with the family servants, who were at the 7th and 8th levels of true power. The level below was the Yun family, whose head told his smug daughter to watch the battle closely. Going down one more level, we see the head of the Zhang family, who with all his appearance makes it clear that he has not yet been able to move on from his son's funeral. On the last level, in front of the common people, were our hero's friends and his sister, accompanied by Daxi Ming. They carefully watched the arena, waiting for the battle to begin. The commoners were already starting to get angry, shouting for the host to either declare a battle or get off the stage. He says that from their gaze he understands how tired he is of them, and says that such an expected battle is about to begin. It was loudly invited to greet the families. The first to come out was the Xu family in its full fighting strength. One of the heads of poor families noticed that the Shu family looked very impressive, and only had to ask him if his family could ever look the same. But the man standing next to him said perhaps only in the next life. The Qing family, consisting of only 2 people, enters the arena next. People in the stands began to discuss that a family that had lived for hundreds of years should be ashamed to be in such a position. Someone thought that Qing Lianshan decided to take everything into his own hands. Xu Er and Daxi Ming silently and seriously watched the events taking place in the arena. The facilitator reminds before the battle that in the evaluation of families it is a battle to the death, unless one side admits defeat in advance. The battle will continue until one of the opponents dies. With a wide smile, he says that their lives are entirely in the hands of God. The first to enter the arena is the so-called human butcher Shu Wugeng, with his 3rd level of true power, saying that his blade thirsts for blood. There was a commotion in the stands. No one expected the human butcher to come out first. Apparently, the Shu family decided to crush the Qing in the first battle. He can only be described as a brutally cruel man who only loves to cause pain. The nickname of the butcher from Luojiang province is fully deserved. The host asks who is going to go out first from the Qing family side, and Wu Shuang raises his hand to start walking forward. But his father bypasses him, saying that he will be the first fighter, As he pulled out his spear before the battle, many different thoughts came into his head. How he insulted his son, allowed his daughter to tremble with fear, humiliation from the rich class. Even ordinary residents dare to speak out against his family. He placed the blame for absolutely all of this on his own shoulders, so he decides to regain his lost dignity and status. The facilitator checks that the two sides are completely ready and takes a deep breath. Then, raising his hands, he loudly announces that the first round in the battle for a place in the rich class has begun. The representative from the Shu family holds his sword tightly and looks into Li Yinshan's eyes, saying that his pathetic soul will follow those who have ever challenged his blade. The head of the Qing family, fully prepared for this fierce battle, rushes head-on at his opponent, swinging his spear. Their weapons clashed in a fierce confrontation, internal energy creating powerful currents of air around the rivals. Shu Wugen had a furious smile on his face. He was thirsty for blood. Vile words flowed from his mouth, and he also warned Li Yinshan that everyone who goes against the Shu family will die. In the first clash, the victory went to the Shu representative. He was able to repel the opponent's spear, which, by the way, surprised the Qing representative. Li Yinshan tensed. Based on the ferocious technique he saw, he knew that the battle would not be easy, but that would not stop him. Shu Wugen makes a furious horizontal swing of his sword, but the opponent manages to duck in time, as a result of which only the edge of his clothing was touched. He continued to deliver furious blows one after another without stopping for a second. This only turned him on more. He liked to watch how a person dodges out of despair every now and then. Under the pressure of such brutal blows, even the arena could not stand being broken into pieces. While he was saying that even if his opponent was as evasive as a rat, no matter where he went, the sword would still overtake him. Without listening to anything, Li Yinshan continued, albeit with difficulty, to evade all the furious attacks aimed at him. People in the stands began to create a scandal, shouting that everyone in the Qing family was a coward, and the fight for the rich class was not training for practicing defensive techniques. They exclaimed why the old man didn't hit back. Then they started shouting that, after all, the Qing family of poor people did not know how to play honestly. Some shouted that he should give up altogether since he couldn't do anything, because he was wasting their time. The daughter of the Yun family also decided to ask her father how they were going to defeat the Shu family if the only thing Elder Qing did was shy away. But the head of the Yun said that she was wrong. He had once fought with Shu Wugen, and according to him, he not only has powerful, but also very fast techniques, even though Elder Qing has difficulty in those evasions. But this means that he still has the strength to fight such a monster as his opponent. At this time in the arena, Wugen, still with the same manic smile, delivers his next furious attack, which tears the arena apart underneath him. He jumped in front of Li Yinshan, raising his sword behind his head, and joyfully shouted that he would not be able to leave. He believed that this would be the end. Li Yinshan decides to accept the enemy's attack directly instead of dodging, since he has no other choice. Shu Wugen uses his fierce sword technique called Sun Split. With a fierce smile, he strikes. Elder Qing, looking straight into the eyes of death, is completely focused, ready to take an attack at any moment. Boom! A blow of incredible power was stopped by Li Yinshan's spear. The blow was so powerful that the ground under the opponent's feet began to crumble. It was simply incredible. Shu Wugen's face turned irritable. He couldn't believe that some Tier 1 true power fighter was able to stop his Sun Split strike. Li Yinshan looks directly at his opponent, starting to sort out his weaknesses in his head. And his attention is drawn to the fact that such a reckless person needs to absorb a lot of furious energy to fight, which in the end weakens the attack. Having chosen the most convenient moment, he easily repels the enemy's attack, which greatly stuns him. His face is filled with a lack of understanding of the current situation. He doesn't know how to react to this. The stands began to burst with shouts about how amazing Elder Qing was. Because he was really able to hit back, he began to fight. Li Yinshan trained with the Book of Tendon Modification for more than 3 years, which strengthened not only his physical abilities, but also his internal energy. Now he is completely different from the person he was 4 years ago. With a serious look, he resolutely launches a counterattack, intending to put into practice the martial arts of the Qing family. The first strike calls Lunar Sentence, but Shu Wugen manages to block it, which again creates powerful gusts of wind from internal energy. But his strength is not enough, and the huge sword is pressed into the floor by a heavy blow from the spear, leaving the seemingly muscular opponent powerless. Shu Wugen's face is filled with rage. For him, this is the greatest humiliation, and he cannot accept the fact that defeat will overtake him very soon. But Li Yinshan carries out the second blow of their Qing family technique called Full Moon Reply, which flies up, causing quite a lot of damage to the enemy. He has no intention of stopping his barrage of attacks and plans to use the Qing family's martial arts offensively again. The enemy cannot take a chance to parry the attacks flying at him, because with each new blow, Elder Qing's strength becomes greater. Li Yinshan uses the third blow called Crescent Explosion, But alas, the opponent, although with difficulty, manages to find the moment and puts a block, again a collision of two weapons. Our old man's spear is not going to give up its positions, and the powerful confrontation continues. Shu Wugen at this time said that he really underestimated his opponent. But in the face of ferocious power, as he said, a flimsy spear would not be able to pierce a huge blade. Lian Shan did not listen to what the thug was telling him, because he was completely focused on the battle, giving it all of himself. He uses the Qing family's martial arts again, spinning his spear as he prepares to deliver the finishing blow. Holy mystical blow, this attack was called. Lian Shan put most of his strength into this attack, and together with the lunge, his spear, breaking into pieces a huge sword, easily pierced through the opponent's head. Even at the last second of his life, he refused to acknowledge his situation, and could not believe that he had lost. The winner drew his spear before the body fell into the arena. With a characteristic sound, the body crashed to the ground, and Lian Shan, turning his back to it, facing the lively stands, raised his spear above his head. And with pride he loudly hit it on the floor so that everyone would pay attention and hear his words. In the stands, among the people, a dead silence reigned for a moment. No one knew how to react to this, and what to say in such an unexpected situation. Wu Shuang's friends began to smile happily. The victory of their friend's father lifted their spirits, removing all the stress that had accumulated before. Xu Er and Daxi Ming also breathed a sigh of relief, while sincerely rejoicing at the victory. Our hero looked at his father with a small smile and pride in his eyes and was reminded of a recent event. He stood next to him and asked him to trust, promised to return their family to its former status. To which the old man replied that he would fight with him. By releasing his inner energy, Lian Shan demonstrated his strength, and looking with a cold gaze towards the Xu family, he asked who would like to be his next opponents. And then the presenter appears again, who after a short time of being in a stupor, still slightly surprised, begins to announce the result. After a moment of incredible shock and interest, he says that in the battle for the rich class, the winner of the first round is none other. As the Qing family, he ended his announcement by pointing his hand towards Elder Qing Lian Shan, standing proudly in the arena. The spectators in the stands perked up again. They could not believe their eyes that the elder of some poor family was strong enough to win a fight with such a famous member of the Xu family. Chief Xu calmly said that he did not expect this, but if achieving the third level of true power was an ace in the hole, then he was disappointed. Qing Lianshan once again loudly asks the question of who his next opponents will be. Xu Sihai volunteered to go to the fight. The head of Xu said that he had counted on this, and he chose his son Xu Zhou as the second person. All the spectators were surprised that it was Xu Sihai who was sent to the second round. It just didn't fit in their heads. Everyone in the stands began to say that most likely the Xu family was seriously angry, because now this fight will be like a real confrontation between the elders, since Xu Sihai's strength is comparable to the head of the family. It was also mentioned that when the battle for the position of clan elder began in the family, Sanli and Sihai fought to the death, but Xu Sihai simply missed in the end. The elder's son is no less amazing. Xu Zhou is ranked third among the 7 young masters, because at this age he is already at the third level of true power. They were filled with confidence that this time Qing Lianshan would definitely not be able to survive and this battle would be his last. The presenter reminds that according to the rules, if the same person enters the battle of the next round, then the number of his opponents doubles. Since Qing Lianshan has decided to enter the second round in a row, the fight will be 1 against 2. After all the announcements, the start of the second round of the battle for a place in the rich class was announced. Xu Sihai began to talk about his surprise at his opponent, who, being worthless trash just 4 years ago, was able to kill Wu Geng. Continuing his monologue directed at his opponent, he put forward his opinion that Lian Shan's level at the moment does not exceed the third true power, and the blow that killed Wu Gen was most likely a crowning blow. Having finished his reasoning, he asked his nephew to leave, saying that the battle would most likely end quite quickly. Stepping forward, he began to emit a very strong aura, his face betraying all his serious intentions. Lian Shan watched him carefully, realizing that the 5th level of true power was far from weak, and the battle ahead of him would be very difficult. But in an instant, his opponent disappeared from sight, although he was right in front of his eyes. Lian Shan was full of surprise. He did not expect such speed. His eyes could not catch the slightest movement. Xu Sihai stopped right in front of him, telling him not to stand like a pillar, because for the elder it should be a shame. The Qing representative decides to attempt an instant attack using the same lunar sentence. But in an instant, the opponent finds himself behind, delivering a serious blow to the back. His speed is simply incredible. Lian Shan, spitting out a small amount of blood due to a missed attack, admits that his strength is not enough to even follow his opponent's movements. The next moment, he jumps away and Xu Sihai asks him if he realized the difference in their strengths. But Elder Qing, not wanting to hear anything, decides to rush head-on at the enemy in order to carry out another attack. His plan is to attempt to deal damage with a wholly mystical strike that coats the spear with lightning-like power. The spear, it would seem, should overtake its target, but Sihai's gaze fell directly on the attack, and not a drop of fear was visible in his eyes. In an instant, he calmly deflects such a powerful attack from himself with the back of his hand, it could not even touch him. Saying that such a blow would not work twice, Shu Sihai strikes Lian to the body. Shana is a powerful blow, reinforced by internal energy. Elder Qing was powerless in the face of such power and flew to a fairly large distance, unable to take the blow. Shu'er, afraid for her father, began to get nervous, and Daxi Ming continued to watch carefully. Lian Shan was spitting out a copious amount of blood at that time. Most likely after that attack he received many internal injuries. He understood that his opponent was very strong, and his power could not compare with Shu Wugeng. If you compare them, Wugeng is nothing more than a lousy dog, while Shu Sihai is a real tiger. This is how the Qing representative sees the difference between his opponents. Sihai, despite the fact that his opponent has still not collapsed, praises him, calling him a rather persistent fighter. But for Lian Shan, his words mean nothing, because only victory is important to him, and nothing more. And it doesn't matter who his opponent is, a tiger or a dog. Jumping above his opponent's head, he decides to use the Qing family's martial arts again. This time he demonstrates the 8-end thrust technique using a spear as the base. Despite all the speed and power of this attack, Shu Sihai dodged absolutely all attacks with incredible simplicity of movements. Dodging another attack, he closes his eyes and says that Lian Shan never understood the difference between them. Shu Sihai catches his opponent's spear with one hand, saying that he has changed his mind about killing him. Having collected energy in the palm of his hand with his decision, he begins to beat his opponent until he admits defeat. And the next moment, Elder Qing faced a direct attack from his opponent, to which he again failed to react. Sihai aimed at him, which by the way is given to him with great difficulty. But alas, Lian Shan again misses a blow to the body. His eyes turn white, and blood flies out of his mouth. Consciousness can leave him at any moment. The palm attack was incredibly powerful. Elder Qing was literally driven into the arena floor, which cracked, unable to withstand the pressure. Qing Wushuang continued to watch as he did not interfere with the battle for now. Elder Shu only said that this happens to everyone who dares to challenge their great family. While Elder Qing lay on the ground in front of Shu Sihai, people in the stands shouted at him to surrender and live in peace, because he was no match for such an opponent. But Lian Shan didn't listen to anything, trying with the last of his strength to get to his feet to repel his opponent. His head did not betray a drop of fear, and having risen to his feet, he gathered all the strength that he had left. His body was covered in flames, with the words that even in the face of death, he would fight until his last breath. His spear began to point towards its target again. Shu Sihai was not afraid of his opponent's strength at all. He only threatened that since this was his wish, then after Lian's death, Shan's family will also be killed. Shu Sanli immediately recognized his brother's pose. It was the last form of the shadow hand that Sihai had been unable to learn for a very long time. Both opponents rushed towards their opponent in preparation for the final attack. Shu Sihai uses the shadow hand technique Rainbow Reaching the Sun, and Lian Shan uses Qing martial arts again. This time the name of the move is Spring Lightning Storm. Their attacks clashed in a furious confrontation, neither of course wanting to lose. The force of this collision is many times stronger than it was when the weapons of Elder Qing and Shu Wugeng crossed. The arena began to collapse under the furious pressure of the two sides. Lian Shan put all his strength into this attack. Giving it his all, he was not going to retreat even a step. Shu Sihai tensed, not expecting to receive such a rebuff, but this still did not shake his faith in his victory. The crowd in the stands could not believe their eyes that the elder of a poor family, who was 2 levels weaker than his opponent, would be able to withstand the attack of a representative of a rich family. The head of the Yun family, who was closely following the battle, objected that most likely everything was not as it might seem at first glance. Unfortunately, under the furious pressure of Shu Sihai's strength, Qing Lian's spear shan began to collapse, unable to withstand the oncoming force. Elder Qing could not believe such an event. The silver spear that had served the ancestors for hundreds of years was broken. The difference between their strengths was like an abyss, and the very next moment an attack was directed at him, breaking the spear that had just been smashed. Looking straight into the eyes of death, he had already accepted his outcome, beginning to scroll through the memories in his head, among which the first thing he remembered was the beautiful girl to whom he apologized for everything. Most likely this is our hero's own mother, and next to him is the young and happy Lian Shan. The assumption turned out to be correct. These are some of the happiest moments in Qing Lian's life, Shanya, because while he has a joyful daughter on his shoulders, his loving wife carries their son in her arms. Further, under his inner voice, he mentions that it was she who entrusted him with the house. These are the moments when she became seriously ill. Before his wife died, he promised to protect the house, but now he apologizes that he cannot do it. Shu-er with Daxi Mingom carefully watched the actions taking place in the arena. Head Yun also watched and came to the decision that this was the end for Elder Qing. A strong explosion occurred in the arena, creating an incredible flow that spread throughout the entire stadium. Shu-er loudly began to call her father. She was scared and could not accept the fact that most likely he was already dead. The spectators in the stands mentioned that despite such a large difference in strength, Qing Lianshan held out for quite a long time. But unexpectedly, something in the dust in the middle of the arena attracted the attention of the elder of the Yun family. What did he notice there? Slowly, the dust that rose from the explosion began to clear, revealing 3 figures inside. Head Lianshan, who had recently accepted his death, were filled with excessive surprise. Standing in front of him was Wu Shuang, who stopped the fatal blow coming at him using just one hand. Shu Sihai was as surprised as Lianshan because some student was able to stop his attack so easily. Our hero's friends, noticing him in the arena, were pleasantly surprised, because for a moment they also thought that Elder Qing had been killed. Lianshan was in a stupor. He did not know how to speak. He just silently looked at this incredible picture. Looking at his father with a calm, light smile, he told him to go and rest, because there was no point in worrying anymore. But the gaze that was directed at Shu Sihai was filled with hatred and a thirst for murder towards his opponent. He takes everything into his own hands. Looking at the leader, he loudly shouted that they accepted defeat and asked for the beginning of the next round. The stands erupted into loud questions due to misunderstanding how a simple boy was able to stop Shu Sihai's blow. Shu Sangli was furious after seeing the scene, because the shadow palm is the strongest technique among all in the Shu family. He was sure that someone had secretly helped him and demanded to see this person. First, his gaze went towards Daxi Minga, but it quickly became clear that he was not capable of such a thing. The next target was the people from the sacred land of Zhengwu, but they could not do such a thing, because the sacred land under no circumstances interferes with the evaluation of families. He was like an angry beast who could not understand where his prey was hiding. The presenter said that our hero turned out to be simply an incomparable guy, and the bald old man in response ordered him to come down and continue the competition. Having jumped into the arena, he had not even landed and began to announce that he was the winner of the second round. The Eshu family he finished already in the arena, right between the 2 opposing families. The stands noticed that although he won, Shu Sihai did not look happy. This is understandable, because his attack of the 5th level of true power was stopped by an ordinary student. Anyone in his place would be happy. Shu Sihai decided to ask whether others were allowed to rush into battle, to which he received the answer that there was no such rule. With a wide smile, the presenter also added that even if there was a rule against the ban, he was just a student. Qing Wu Shuang, turning to Shu Sihai, notices that he is not too satisfied, and if so, invites him to stay in the arena and start the next round. Looking at them, he said without a drop of doubt that the 2 of them attacked at once. Apparently, he is completely confident in his abilities. Lianshan still continued to look at his son with his mouth open. Most likely, he had already realized that he was much stronger than himself. Elder Yun's daughter loudly protested that Wu Shuang had gone crazy. In her opinion, it seemed obvious that in a one-on-one fight there was a better chance of winning. She decided to ask her father if the judge was really on the side of the Qing family. But Head Yun said that everything was wrong and our hero really stopped that attack. He assumes that Wu Shuang is at the same level, if not higher, because he had the power to block the 5th level of true power. Shu Zhou began to lose his temper, saying that in order for our hero not to become arrogant, he promises to beat everything he can out of him. Wu Shuang did not take their words by, and the only thing he heard was the announcer's announcement. Standing on his staff, he loudly announced that the 3rd round of the battle for the rich class was starting now. Shu Sihai immediately decides to mention that our hero should have died 4 years ago, and also said not to hope for victory by stopping only one of the attacks. He continues his monologue directed at Wu Shuang, saying that Zhang Xian should have killed him and buried him there in the academy. The main character is not affected by such threats. He only takes notes from himself, promising to try them on his opponents. Shu Sihai assures that that technique was not the strongest, and this time he will not be so lucky. Wu Shuang, starting to release energy from his body, provocatively said that he would give Sihai a chance to carry out the first 3 attacks against him. But Shu Zhou decides to rush at him, threatening to kill our hero, because he is completely confident in his strength. His attempt to finish the round in one move failed, because the main character had no problem easily dodging the blow. The next moment, Wu Shuang was already behind Shu Zhou, saying that the head start was not intended for him. And before the guy had time to turn around, a powerful blow had already overtaken our hero. It seemed like a simple move, but the power was so incredible that Shu Zhou was instantly thrown out of the arena. His head broke through the walls of the arena, and his face took on a strange appearance. Shu Zhou could not move, the blow hit important organs, and now he is nothing more than a simple invalid. Shu Sanli was in a stupor and began to loudly call for his son, hoping to hear an answer. Spectators from the stands, looking at the motionless guy lying motionless, were surprised at the strength of our hero, and could not believe that he was so strong. After knocking out his first opponent, Wu Shuang looked at Xu Sihai and said that it was time for his move. He tensed up and began to worry that with such power, our hero could really be at the 5th level of true power. Sihai considered hesitation an impossibility and headed towards Wu Shuang using the shadow hand technique. Purity like a peach forest was the name of this form of technique, but the beautiful name did not help it cause any damage to our hero. The spectators continued to be surprised, realizing that Xu Sihai's attacks were not working at all. Lian Shan was also already in the stands next to Xu Er, and since he was injured, he was supported by Daxi Ming. Without straining, Wu Shuang accepted such a strong palm strike with his head. His only reaction besides a grin was the words that although the technique was beautiful, it clearly lacked strength. Xu Sihai decides to launch another attack using the techniques of the shadow hand technique. Although the name, which sounds like power selling the shadows of chaos, may instill fear in weak warriors, our hero is not afraid of this. Sihai's disappointment and surprise. Even such a powerful move was blocked by a hand movement, and with just a slight push he threw away his opponent's hand without moving a single step to the side. Looking at Xu Sihai coldly, the hero asks a provocative question whether he was injured. Shouting that he doesn't want pity from him, Sihai begins to emit powerful energy in preparation for his strongest attack. Crossing his palms in front of him, he began to collect all his internal energy in them. Xu Sanli, seeing how all his energy was collected in his palm, was surprised that he was brought to this, because he used this technique in the battle against him. Xu Sihai rushed forward at his enemy with the hope of finishing everything with one blow. A blow of incredible force landed right in the face of our hero, who, with all his strength, did not move a single step back. From the shockwave after such a blow, the arena behind Wu Shuang shattered into pieces, raising a huge amount of dust into the air. Full of tension, Xu Sihai simply could not believe that such a blow would have no effect, because all his hopes were only in this technique. Suddenly his eyes filled with horror which he could hardly ever experience before. There was a frightening picture before his eyes. His strongest blow was stopped by just one finger, and Wu Shuang looked at him mercilessly, saying that 3 attacks had passed, and now it was his turn. Quietly saying the name of the true Inferno technique, his fist was surrounded by flames. Wu Shuang hadn't even struck yet, but the force of his strike had already begun to suppress Xu Sihai's aura. He realized that things were bad and crossed his arms in front of him and tried to put a block in the hope that it would save him. And at this very moment, Wu Shuang strikes with incredible power, which is called the ominous burning of 9 suns. There is an explosion in the arena again, but this time it is much stronger than all those that came before. The spectators in the stands could not understand what was happening, because they were blinded by the flash from the fiery impact. The light spread throughout the entire stadium. Seaman Qian and his servants peered and tried to see what was happening in the arena. And the next moment he was very surprised by something. Let's find out what happened in the arena. The dust cleared a little, and everyone could see the scorched body of Xu Sihai. Xu Sanli couldn't believe his eyes. Sihai's defeat was the most unexpected thing that could happen to him. He stood in the same position, not moving or making any sounds. His clothes were burned in places, and his whole body was covered with a huge burn. Wu Shuang, who came forward, did not pay attention to him, and he, frozen in the same block position, collapsed to the floor. The stands were bursting with screams. No one expected that a fighter of the 5th level of true power would be defeated by an ordinary student, and all the rumors about the strength of our hero that anyone had ever heard were confirmed. Elder Zhang, seeing such a picture, began to curse himself for the death of his sons, and also blamed the Xu family for everything. Even the lead judge froze in shock for a moment, but soon came to his senses and began to announce. Stuttering a little, he checked to make sure he was seeing exactly what he was seeing, collecting his thoughts. The host announces that the winner of the 3rd round in the battle for the rich class is the Qing family. Wu Shuang's family and friends rejoiced after his victory, because he doesn't even have a scratch. It's just amazing. Daxi Ming fell into thought. He once assumed that our hero's strength was at most at the 6th level of true power. But he was mistaken. Now he is filled with confidence that Wu Shuang is much higher than this. The presenter at this moment had already completely returned to reality, and with the same smile announced that since it was already noon, it was necessary to take a break, and the 4th round would begin very soon. Spectators in the stands watched Wu Shuang leave while simultaneously discussing what the Xu family would do, because their future depends on the assessment of the families. Simon Qian is tensed by such events, and he decides to make his move. 3 servants standing behind him on his instructions were sent to check on our hero. For a moment, you should go to the Xu family, which begins to panic a little, and come up with a plan to win the next round. Their family could not be harmed by anyone since becoming a wealthy class, but now Xu Zhou is seriously injured, and Xu Sihai has a damaged nervous system. Xu Sanli asks the young master Shimen to help him. Simon Qian, taking a sip of tea, says not to panic but just wait for good news. Next, let's move to the hotel where our hero and his family are staying. Daxi was also with the Ming. Wu Shuang asked his father to take off his outer clothing in order to cure him with the help of needles. From his past life experiences, he realized that transferring energy through acupuncture could cure a person in a matter of minutes. Before the procedure begins, our hero decides to thank Daxi Ming for the help provided, to which he replies that it is possible without pleasantries. He also adds that he could not have done otherwise, glancing at Xu Er. Qinglian Shan, seeing such a picture, thinks that his children are already completely grown up. Suddenly, a loud voice came from behind the brothers-in-law, addressing the father and son of the Qing family. This attracted Wu Shuang's attention. Perhaps he already knew that sooner or later someone would appear. Having released an oppressive aura inside the room, the voice ordered them to go out for an important conversation, if you can call it that. Wu Shuang, having told his father to stay inside, was about to go outside, but Daxi Ming said he wanted to go with him. But he objected, asking him to stay so that in the worst case he could protect his family, because it is unknown who those people are and what exactly they came for. Daxi Ming, understanding the whole situation, agrees, saying that our hero can completely rely on him. Leaving the room, he saw 3 old men standing on the roof opposite him, who were also quite strong. Looking at them, Wu Shuang immediately realized that they belonged to the Ximen clan, because at the moment only they could afford to send a master of the 8th level of true power. The chief of the old men, who looked quite scary due to his appearance, said that since our hero is aware of their strength, then in the next battle for the rich class, the Qing family must admit defeat. Looking menacingly at his ill-wishers, he asked what would happen if they refused. Saying that it depended only on himself, 2 of the old men rushed towards Wu Shuang in an instant, while the one in charge simply watched. They were quickly approaching, emitting a frightening aura. But this was not surprising, because both of them were at the 7th level of true power. But Wu Shuang just stood and watched them approach. There was no place for fear in his eyes. He was full of self-confidence because his family was behind him. 2 powerful attacks with the power of the 7th level of true power were aimed at our hero. Having taken all the damage, he lay motionless among a pile of stones. As soon as the 2 servants climbed back onto the roof, the chief among them said that it was time to return with a report. In their opinion, the guy was overrated and did not have strength above the 6th level of true power. But our hero cannot be killed with such a weak attack, and he says to Simon's servants that they are strange, because they just came and beat someone. As he rose to his feet, the servants thought it was amazing to be able to stand after being attacked by 2 masters together. The chief, having asked why those 2 spared the boy, decided to remind them that the young master ordered to get rid of the Qings. The guy and the man said that it was so, because he could not be stronger than them. In fact, those 2 were briefly overcome by panic, because they were 7-level masters of true power who were hitting almost at full strength. Having scanned his rivals, Wu Shuang turned to them, saying that he was interested in how they would deal with him. The only one who could pose a danger was their leader with the 8th level of true power. This angered the servants, and they decided to carry out a joint attack between the 3 of them. A familiar scene as our hero is surrounded by 3 opponents at once, and he begins to emit a powerful aura. His eyes begin to sparkle due to the copious amount of energy applied. But this time, instead of retaliating, he, using a special technique, loudly shouts the name of the Simon family. His words stated that he hereby declares. The power of his scream not only cracked the concrete, but also sent the 2 servants on the 7th level flying backwards. The chief among the 3 servants learned that our hero had used a technique known as the Lion's Roar. In the room where our hero's family and Daxi were, Ming could also hear his voice perfectly. Heman were standing behind them. Death was already nearby. His voice was heard throughout the city. Absolutely every person heard this message. He didn't stop for a second, continuing to say that he would wipe their pathetic family off the face of the earth. In the Shu manner, everyone was stunned by such a flamboyant statement and an open challenge comparable to humiliation. Simon Qian also paid attention to Wu Shuang's words, because he said that since the Shimen family decided to intervene in the family dispute, he would persecute each of them. People in the city were also very surprised that the battle of lower-ranking aristocrats attracted representatives of the highest, and this all also led to serious threats. Lion's Roar was able to damage the 7th level servants, and the 8th level servant realized that most likely our hero's energy could be higher than his. He was surprised that at that age, someone could have the 8th level of true power. Someone's voice was heard from the roof, saying that pursuing family assessment participants violated the rules. It was the lead judge and the old man who was the chief examiner of the test. The host said that it seems that the Shimen people are underestimating the sacred land of Zhengwu. The servants did not expect such important people to appear. Most likely, if not for the lion's roar of our hero, they would not have appeared. They quickly descended to the ground, inviting everyone to quickly and peacefully disperse, saying that that was enough for today. The chief of the servants understood that since even Wu Shang's strength was not lower than the 8th level of true power, they would not be able to defeat 3 strong masters at once. He decided to get his people out of there as quickly as possible before trouble overtook them. As soon as they left the scene, Wu Shuang addressed the old man as Baldhead and asked why they had come if he had not finished the battle yet. The old man replied that they came because of strange sounds. He mentioned that the Simon family is becoming more and more bold. Most likely they have succeeded in many ways. Our hero asked what their strength was. The old man replied that among all the feudal lords in the kingdom, Simon was in 5th place. They are the strongest overlords of the southern heavenly country. There are 8 provinces under their control. 3 of their family are at the 8th level. They have 10 people at the 7th level, or even more. Their elder is a great warrior at the 9th level of true power. To put it more briefly, everything is quite simple, the old man said. Compared to them, all the aristocrats of the southern heavenly country are nothing more than a bunch of ants. While Wu Shuang was thinking out loud that he now understood where Shimen got such confidence from, he mentally compared that the 9th level is the same level as the peak of his strength in his previous life. Moving away from the topic, the old man, having mentioned that the next battle for the place of the rich class will soon begin, decides to ask whether our hero will continue or wants to give up. Having received a counter question as to why he should refuse the fight, the old man continued. He wondered if he was afraid to face such a strong family. A wide smile stretched across his face as he only wanted to say one thing. His plans are to wipe out the Shu family from the face of the earth so that only rumors remain about them. Well, events move to Shu's house, where Shu Sanli is standing near the entrance. Simon came out of the main entrance Qian with his servants, who suggested that he first return to his family. Elder Shu approached them. He ran up to him and said that the time for the next battle was approaching, followed by the question of what they should do. Simon Qian, without even looking at him, asked a counter question. Who are the 2 strongest warriors in the family at the moment? The answer was received quickly as the 3 sacrificed themselves for the sake of the family, leaving only Shu Sanli and his uncle Yue. After the answer, the next question followed, whether the 2 of them could fight against Daxi Henga. Shu Sanli replied that they were both at the 5th level of true power, while Daxi Heng is in 7th and fighting him will be problematic. After answering, he asked again what they should do in the next battle. Looking at Shu's head, Ximen Qian said that since this is the case, now they have only 2 options, either accept defeat or fight until death. Shu Sanli was dissatisfied with this answer and rudely asked if someone should not help Qing Wu Shuang, to which he received an answer. What a man Ximen Qianya, at the 8th level of true power, ran away from him with the only words that the boy's strength was no lower than his own. Shu Sanli was stunned because he never expected to hear that some student had the strength of the 8th level. With the words that the choice is up to Elder Shu, Ximen Qian left him. Now the time has come for the 3rd battle for a place in the rich class. Events moved to the arena of Luojiang province. Various rumors were heard throughout the arena. Some said that the Eshu were avoiding the fight because they were scared after the morning fights. Some accused them as the most cruel aristocrats of the province, while others praised Qing Wu Shuang, calling them the reincarnation of a spiritual child. Even the other 2 rich families began to doubt that Elder Shu would bring his men to fight. The stands roared with shouts for the Shu family to leave the province, and there were also a lot of insults directed at them. But they were all overshadowed by a loud shout ordering everyone to shut up. Sanli landed in the center of the arena between Wu Shuang and the judge, emitting an overwhelming aura. His aura suppressed most of the spectators in the stands, as a result of which absolutely everyone fell silent. Everyone from the Shu family entered the arena, which greatly surprised the crowd, who had not expected them to appear at all. Shu Sanli, reciting their family's motto, which calls for fighting like lions until the enemy is destroyed. He could not understand what the Qing could do that would force him to leave his place. He is determined to see what the demon-like Qing Wu Shuang really is. Wu Shuang himself was very glad that Elder Shu dared to come, because now nothing could stop him from taking revenge on him for everything. Shu Sanli, without a hint of mercy, asks the judge if he understands correctly that in this round, Wu Shuang will have to fight 4 people at once. The stands were surprised by Elder Shu's cowardice. People shouted that in such a battle the guy had no chance of winning. Elder Yun was interested in the answer that Qing Wu Shuang would give in response to such an impudent challenge. The judge began to say that according to the rules, since he is fighting for the 2nd time, then everything is correct. Our hero said there was no problem. He doesn't care about the number of opponents. He accepts the fight. People close to the main character were surprised that he accepted the fight without an ounce of doubt. Elder Yun's daughter also wondered what Wu Shuang thought of himself, saying that he was pretending to be tough. Suddenly 3 old men appear in the arena, who will act on the side of the Shu family. As soon as they appeared, they immediately began to evaluate Wu Shuang. The first one was annoyed that some brat pulled him out to fight. The second was surprised that Shu Sihai was defeated by the hands of such a young boy. The The third turned out to be the master of Shihai, so his goal was revenge out of his own interests. The two elders of the remaining rich families were very surprised when they saw the trio of old men, and Head Yun noticed that if the trio, who had not gone out into the world for more than 10 years, stood on stage, then Shu Sanli was completely desperate. It was thanks to them that the Shu family began to spread its influence over the entire province of Luojiang. Although their strength is only at the 5th level of true strength, once they unite, they will be able to compare with the former elder of the Daxi clan, Daxi Huo, 7th level. Using 3 elders in battle, Shu Sanli gains complete confidence in victory against the main character. Even before the battle began, Wu Shuang was already surrounded by 4 representatives of the Shu family. The judge announced that the 4th round for a place in the rich class, 1 against 4, began. Immediately, the elders decide to use a group technique to imprison our hero. Gathering energy between their hands, they began to list all 5 elements, which sound like Child of Water, Bad Earth, Torah Tree, Sci-Fire, and Almighty Gold. Having finished the spells, the elders, together with Shu Sanli, lock our hero inside the flow of the thunder array of the 5 elements. Elder Yun, watching the battle, said that it was all over because they were able to complete the flow of the thunder mass, and now Wu Shuang has no chance of winning. Without thinking about the possible consequences, he confidently taps his finger on the wall of the barrier. After analyzing the power of the completed technique, Wu Shuang said that this technique is quite powerful, and now it becomes clear why feudal lords like Shimen love them so much. One of the elders said that they know our hero's fighting skills very well, but because of his carelessness, he is trapped in their opinion. No one will be able to escape from their array. No matter how strong the main character is, the Shu family is confident that they will be safe as long as he remains locked up. But to their great regret, there was not a drop of panic in Wu Shuang's gaze. On the contrary, he looked at his opponents like worthless scum. Raising his hand, the hero calmly pronounces the words that everything in this world has a cause and effect. He begins to collect and release large amounts of energy, saying that it doesn't matter what kind of technique it is. The most important thing is where his power comes from. Saying that such tricks will not work on him, Wu Shuang prepares to break through the barrier. Our hero in an instant began to release a colossal amount of internal energy from his body, and the mass began to crack, and it was about to shatter into pieces. Seeing such power, the elders instantly decide to strengthen the array by casting another spell. Immediately after this, the activation of a new array, the extermination array, begins. But since he won't be able to hold out for long, they want to use the displacement technique to kill our hero in one blow. The 4 of them combined their powers, gathering thunderous energy above Wu Shuang's head. He, in turn, did not even open his eyes during all this commotion, and his only words were that he was tired of everything. And the next moment, a violet beam of pure thunder energy fell upon him with destructive force. From such an attack, the arena was split into 7 large parts and a pile of smaller stones. Our hero's friends were surprised by the strength shown by the old men and began to worry about their friend. Because of the huge cloud of dust, no one could see what was currently happening in the arena, which irritated everyone terribly. Our hero's father and his sister also began to worry whether something had happened to him. Suddenly, Lian's face Shanya changed to very surprised. Apparently, he was able to see something. The huge dust cloud formed as a result of that technique began to quickly dissipate. Among the rubble and dust, Wu Shuang stood completely unharmed, holding the corpses of 2 elders by the hair in his hands. The 3rd lay nearby. The members of the Shu family, their mouths open in surprise, did not know how to react or what to say after seeing such a sad scene for them. The spectators in the stands were also at a loss for words when they saw the dead bodies of 3 elders, who were considered incredibly powerful fighters. The only survivor was Shu Xiangli, who coughed up a pile of blood. His thoughts were forgotten by Wu Shuang breaking the array capable of catching a warrior of the 8th level of true power. He looked at his opponent with a frightened look, wondering what to do next. Wu Shuang, continuing to emit powerful internal energy, said that it was Shu Sanli's turn to make his move. Elder Shu, saying that he did not expect to be defeated even with the help of the 3 elders, makes a difficult decision for himself, and eats the pill received from the young master Hemen. Seaman Qian gave it for use as a last resort. It will be able to increase the strength of the recipient for a short time. As soon as he accepted it, Sanli's body began to change, losing its human appearance. Wu Shuang was very surprised to see such a scene. He had never encountered anything like this before. Shu Sanli's body became black, his hair turned white. Small horns grew on his head, and a strength that had never been seen before spread throughout his body. Brothers Shu Yuan and Shu Ting, watching what was happening in the arena, did not understand what was happening, and also stopped recognizing their father. The chief among the servants asked Simon Qian how he persuaded the elder to take a pill taken from the royal family, to which he received an answer about Shu Sanli's ignorance of the side effects. Covering his hands with red energy, he rushed at Wu Shuang, wanting to kill him in revenge for his family. His strength, by the way, rose to the 8th level of true power. But instead of a seemingly direct attack, he fired a ray of light at the enemy, which was many times stronger than that created by the elders. Since our hero was also at the 8th level, and therefore covering his hands in flames, he decides to repel the attack head-on. Their blows collided in a confrontation with internal energy, and Wu Shuang was not going to give up his position. As a result, the force of our hero's blow surpassed the enemy, successfully repelling the attack. But even after successfully repelling him, he could not understand what Shu Sanli had eaten to cause his strength to increase so dramatically. As soon as Sanli felt the full power of the new force, he immediately thought that now our hero's techniques would be nothing for him. Zhengwu's Sacred Land were also surprised by that strange pill, but they were even more interested in the side effect. The judge knew that when it was used, the energy center was destroyed, but in return, strength increased for a short period. The old man added that this does not pass without a trace, because as soon as the time of action expires, his body will be subject to changes. The most important question remained where Shu Sanli got the godforsaken drug from. Elder Shu didn't know about such side effects, so he thought that after 5 minutes he would simply return to normal. He decides to destroy our hero with his strongest move. Wu Shuang admits that Shu Sanli has exceeded his expectations, and decides to use his strongest attack to date in the same way. They rushed at each other, which meant the advent of a battle that had never been seen before during the assessment of families. Elder Shu used the Jade Labyrinth technique, Wolf Shadow, and Wu Shuang countered him with the Sun Power technique, 9 Sunstrike. As a result of their collision, a huge explosion occurred in the arena, and the arena itself scattered in different directions. The spectators at the tribunal were carried away by a powerful shockwave. Not everyone could even stand on their feet. Even the rich class were surprised by such a fierce battle. No one had seen this before, even in the battle for the rich class. Shu Sanli shouted that resistance was useless, and our hero could not withstand his technique. Wu Shuang replied that such a weak technique could not overcome his daily training. Their different types of internal energy revolved around the impact, opposing each other. But ultimately, our hero's strength surpassed his opponent, destroying his protective layer. Shu Sanli could not believe this outcome and continued to shout that it was simply impossible. Wu Shuang, without slowing down, said that the fate of Sanli would be decided here and now. The first strike was in retaliation for the bullies who bullied the past Qing Wu Shuang. The second blow fell in the enemy's face, for all the humiliation that his father had to endure. The third blow was the most furious, and was intended in revenge for the eternal persecution of his sister. It was he who became fatal for Shu Sanli, breaking through the entire protective layer that appeared after using the pill. The elder of the once great Shu family was sent flying, smashing not only the arena, but also part of the stands with his body. His children, Shu Yuan and Shu Ting, were in a panic, because even with such strength, their father was completely defeated. The effect of the drug ended, and the strength left Shu Sanli's body, disfigured by instant aging. Standing above him was Wu Shuang, who was about to send the elder on his last journey, but he could not come to terms with such an outcome. He began to scream in panic that he was admitting everything and accepting defeat. His gaze was filled with fear. Wu Shuang looked at his fallen opponent with contempt, saying that he could not hear anything he was muttering. Shu Sanli closed his eyes and loudly shouted that he was giving up. His scream could be heard throughout the stadium as he declared that he was giving up and the Shu family was accepting defeat. Lying on the ground, he had only one desire in his thoughts: to survive in order to return with vengeance in the future. Wu Shuang looked at his defeated opponent, understanding his thoughts. To avoid this, he decides to deliver a finishing blow with his foot, so that the old man will never have the thought of revenge again. After spitting out a copious amount of blood, Shu Sanli loses consciousness due to multiple internal injuries. Our hero, looking mercilessly at him for the last time, apologizes for pretending he didn't hear. He calmly turned to the spectators in the stands and proudly looked around the entire stadium. The presenter raises his staff to his mouth and begins to make a joyful announcement. His face, as always, adorned with a smile. In the name of the sacred land of Zhenwu, he announces that in the evaluation of the families of Luojiang province, the winner for a place in the rich class is the Qing family. Xu Er jumped for joy when she heard that her brother had won. Even Daxi Ming reacted cheerfully to his victory. Wu Qinglianshanya, in general out of pride, had a tear in his eye, because his son was able to do the almost impossible. Niu family, beaten, lay stunned by the strength of our hero. The rich families were also very surprised that a simple-looking young man had such terrible power. Daxi family was no different from the others, because like everyone else, he was too surprised. The stands were bursting with cries about the power of the Qing and their greatness. Absolutely everyone watched as Shu left the arena, shouting in their backs that their power had finally come to an end. Everyone was incredibly encouraged by the fall of these tyrants. The sons carried their father, who was most likely unconscious, under their arms. Seaman Qian also observed everything, paying attention to Shu Sanli's face. He assumed that the side effect had worked, and now his strength had dropped to a maximum of the 3rd level of true power. He decides to leave because now the Shu are completely useless to them. The host loudly congratulated the Qing family on returning to their former status, and it was the turn of the sign of the rich classes. They called Elder Qing to come and receive this insignia. Lian Shan never thought that after so many years his family would be able to see this sign again. He thanked his son, saying that all this was thanks to him. He was very proud of him. The stands were abuzz with loud cries of praise for the wealthy Qing family. Representatives of lower-class families also praised Qing, saying that people like them should be looked up to, and Elder Jiang at this time fell from the shock he received. Elder Daxi also had a high opinion of the Qing family, saying that with such growth, they would become the bright future of Luojiang province. He further added that after all the events, many will want to cooperate with their family, which will help them quickly get back on their feet. The presenter, turning to the old man, said that he was confident that he did not expect to see this. He offered to prevent the spread of rumors about this assessment of families, to which the old man replied that the presenter would do this, and he himself would go with a report to Lord Wu Sheng. Before leaving, he looked carefully at our hero. Apparently, he was very interested in the fact that he was a warrior of the 8th level of true power. In honor of the victory of the Qing family, a large banquet was organized, which brought together all the aristocratic families, from poor to rich. Wu Shuang and his friends were sitting at one of the tables, congratulating him on his promotion to the rich class, and discussing Shu's well-deserved fall. Even though they are now farmers, they still have a strong family business. Their conversation was interrupted by the young lady of the Yun family, calling Wu Shuang, to which he immediately asked the question, "Should she not bother me again?" She calmly replied that she was not going to pester him, but came to congratulate him, and also added that despite his age, his strength is worthy of recognition. But he responded with a request that it would be better if she stopped harassing him. Lian Shan asked for everyone's attention. He wanted to personally thank everyone who came to celebrate such a significant event together. The first to approach him was the elder of the Qian family, saying that a book should not be judged by its cover, and also expressed his admiration for the Qing family. The next moment, a crowd of families from a lower class surrounded him, raising a toast to him. Smiling in everyone's face, Lian Shan understood how important your status and strength are. The higher they are, the more respect you will receive. Elder Qian shouted not to disturb him and pushed everyone aside. He, saying that he was surprised by Wu Shuang, decides to offer him his pretty daughter in marriage, saying that her beauty and other aspects are worthy of attention. Elder Yun came up from behind and put his hand on Qian's shoulder and said that she was still young and did not know Wu Shuang. But his dear daughter Young Er would suit him perfectly, so he believed, based on his training at the same academy when they were still children. Elder Qian decides to go on the offensive, recalling that it was Yun's daughter who burst into Wu Shuang's room, accusing him of an unproven crime. He immediately found an excuse by blaming Shu Ting for everything, and said that his daughter was simply dragged into the showdown. The elders swooped down on Lian Shan, trying to find out whose daughter would be more suitable for Wu Shuang. The elders of the other families laughed as they watched the two old men trying to sell their daughters in front of everyone. At this time, things were not so rosy and cheerful in the Shu estate. 5 coffins were placed in front of the crippled elder, who could not stand on his own. Shu Sanli asks Elder Yu if he has done everything, to which he receives the answer that everyone is ready, and they are waiting only for him. Luojiang province as soon as possible, because otherwise they will be exterminated in less than 6 months. But before that, they will head to the lands of Wu, to the city of Dongling, to ambush and destroy the Qings, because without descendants, they will not be able to quickly be reborn, and will become the laughing stock of the province. They are ready to do anything, but they have a difficult journey ahead, through thousands of miles of the great Mount Sang, hundreds of prefectures and provinces. But this does not matter to them, because the Baiyue kingdom has left us, so finding refuge in the Wu lands is an urgent matter. They had many enemies in the past who would return after losing the rich class. Even taking the Qing as an example, they would be among the first to want to completely destroy Shu. At this point, the conversations are over. They, having divided into 2 teams, set out on the road. The first group will head to the Qing residence and burn everything there along with the house of their ancestors. The same will happen with the fields and with the oil factory. Then they will head to the southeast. The feast continued because no one suspected anything about vile intentions. While everyone was drinking and having fun, someone politely called out to Wu Shuang. It was one of the Yun sisters. She wanted to talk to him personally, citing important information in her hands. They went outside, and the girl asked whether the young master knew about the danger awaiting his family. She assures him that she will tell everything if she can get a promise from our hero. Wu Shuang was about to leave, saying that he was not interested in making deals with strangers, nor was he interested in promises to do anything for them. When she tried to stop him, she received a rather rude reaction, accompanied by the words, either she should tell her information honestly, or let her leave and hope for nothing more. A few words were also said about the promise. For example, that it would be strange to trust a promise from someone you see for the first time. She shouted sharply that if this was our hero's promise, then she would believe in him. Then she realized that instead of empty talk, she needed to get to the point. She tells Wu Shuang that according to her sources, the Shu family is planning to do something against his family. The girl is also confident that they will realize their plans that evening. His voice is full of confidence, and our hero listens to her to the end. True, he still didn't understand where Shu got the audacity to oppose his family again. And it was at that moment that something came to his mind. Most likely, the whole picture became clearer in his head. Wu Shuang begins to run sharply back to the hall, shouting that he will definitely repay for the information. The girl shouted after him to find her at the Redwood Martial Arts Academy. But one problem remains. How will he find her if he ran away without even asking her name? Our hero hurriedly ran into the banquet hall and went to his father with urgent news. Having told the whole situation, Lian Shan was stunned. His surprise knew no bounds. He addressed all the guests, saying that a problem had arisen that required urgent attention, and, in connection with this, another feast would be held later. But already at the Qing house, the elder mentioned that he would be waiting for everyone at it. Daxi Ming and our hero's sister quickly came over to find out what was happening in the end. Wu Shuang briefly explained the situation, and added that if they get to Donglin City, there will be trouble because the house is guarded by only a few servants. Daxi Ming suggested calling his men to go together in pursuit of Shu. Our hero asking him to take care of his sister while he and his father urgently go to the city of Donglin. Ming agreed. At this time, in the Qing residence, the servants were already decorating everything with lanterns, not expecting any trouble. Everything was led by the guardian of the Qing family named Qing Lian Chuan. He asked one of the servants to bring a ladder. Another was ordered to go at dawn to buy fireworks, and so many that they would blind the eyes, because the elder had to be greeted properly. The guy said that everything will be done, because he is a servant of the rich class. Having received a small scolding not to be arrogant, the boy asks if the fourth gentleman, as the guard was called, remembers a certain little Li from the western side. He remembers her, of course, because the boy liked her, but her mother rejected him, because she considered him anti-promising. But the guy with a smile on his face replied that today she came and said that now her mother is not against their relationship. The old man, calling him lucky, warned that such a mother-in-law would bother him, but the boy deftly replied that he would not spend time with her every day. But despite all the news, first of all, we need to deal with the congratulations of their gentleman. Meanwhile, Shu Sanli and his men had already arrived and noticed the Qing hanging lanterns. With a face pissed off at everything, he decides to wipe the joyful grins off their faces. Wu Shuang and his father raced along the forest road on their horses. Lian Shan says they should hurry up because he has a bad feeling about it. Meanwhile, the Qing residence was already engulfed in flames. The Shu family had already begun their plan, and a real massacre was going on inside. The guard suggested that most likely those bastards came to seek revenge until the elder and his family returned. The Shu stood at the entrance, in front of the part where the servants of the Qing family were trying to hide. Shu Sanli looked at the gate and thought it was outrageous. Despite his condition, he cuts the door with a few simple strokes of his sword, thereby opening a passage for himself. Seeing the door shattered into pieces, the servants tensed up and began to prepare for a fierce battle. All the members of the Shu family walked inside with angry faces. Their revenge was about to be carried out. The guard ordered everyone to get ready, and the servants took up fighting positions. The fourth gentleman firmly decided that he must stop the chaos at any cost, because the victory of the elder and his son must be celebrated. He offers encouraging words that the house served as a resting place for their elder's ancestors, and although they are not part of the Qing family, he believes the opposite. They should not allow such a valuable place to be destroyed. After these words, at his command, everyone rushed into a frontal attack on their enemy. The Shu did the same, and a bloody battle began. Members of the formerly wealthy family, who had practiced the family's martial arts since childhood, crossed their weapons with the poor family's ordinary servants. Shu Zhou was fighting with the same guy who was supposed to go get fireworks. He was pushing him hard. In the end, there was a huge difference between them, which led to his weapon breaking. Shu Zhou said that all the blows that Wu Shuang inflicted on him would be reflected on Qing. One can immediately see a real worm that is not able to defeat the strong and mocks the weak. The guard was distracted to check if everything was okay with the guy, but this action distracted him from his fight, and he missed the blow that played the turning point. Without having time to react, he receives a second rather strong blow. While he was beating the guard, he monologued that Wu Shuang's strength did not matter if he could not protect his charges. He could not offer any resistance. He simply did not have the strength left for it. Meanwhile, our hero was still on the road. He understood that they would have time to get there quickly, because the horses were starting to get tired. Wu Shuang, jumping off his horse, heads to the residence under his own power to get there as quickly as possible. The enraged Lian Shan also does not intend to lag behind him. While they were on their way, The Qing residence continued to burn, and there was no one who dared to help them. The children of the Shu family walked around with torches, continuing to spread the flames more and more so that it would engulf the nearest buildings. Inside the estate engulfed in flames, all the servants who defended the family home were defeated. In attempts to protect the family's valuable place, some of the servants were killed, and a small number were left severely wounded. The servants who remained on their feet tried to attack the old man from Shu as a whole group, because defeating the strongest of the fighters would greatly help. He looked at them, realizing that even with so many, they did not pose a danger to him. In one movement, all the attacking servants were killed by shadow copies that appeared out of nowhere. Shu Sanli also did not stand idle. Without any pity, he cut with his sword everyone who tried to stand in his way. Despite all the numerous losses on the part of the Qing servants, none of them retreated back. On the contrary, everyone went to certain death defending the estate. Elder Shu continued to kill everyone, saying that as long as the Qing were alive, the Shu family would not rest in peace. After a while, almost all the servants who resisted were killed, and the ground in the courtyard was strewn with corpses. The merchant who worked with our hero, who came running to the noise, could not move when he saw such a cruel picture. The guard held on with all his might. He had some strength left, but he continued to try to protect his ancestral home. Shu Sanli walked towards him, wanting to destroy him to the ground. His path was blocked by a boy who could barely stand on his feet. He was holding a spear in his hands and did not want to give up until the last moment. Elder Shu suggested that the guy move away, and then he promises to spare his life. But he is not going to leave, because it was thanks to the help of Elder Qing that he was able to survive, instead of suffering a mortal fate on the street. Shu Sanli cuts off the boy's hand in one quick, precise movement, showing his superiority. As soon as he falls to the ground in pain, the old man steps on him, telling him to carefully watch how their house will be destroyed. Elder Shu starts laughing and says that he will kill everyone after destroying the house. He is filled with confidence that after this, no one will come close to him. But the boy doesn't want to give up and let the villain into the house, so, saying that he won't get through, he grabs him by the clothes. Shu Sanli, unable to bear it, turns around and kicks the poor guy, throwing him up like a ball. He looks at him, understanding where such self-confidence and devotion towards some poor family comes from. Even being on the verge of death, the guy holds the old man tightly by the leg and does not want to let him go to his ancestor's house. After such desperate resistance, Shu Sanli decides to kill him, the sword raised above his head. The boy had already accepted his fate and began to apologize to his girlfriend Lin Yang that he would not be able to marry her in this life. Suddenly, a bright beam of light descended to the ground in the middle of the courtyard, accompanied by yellow lightning and a powerful impact force. Shu Sanli was thrown back by the strong shockwave that arose after the blow, which left him greatly shocked. Other representatives of the Shu family, closing their eyes and placing their hands in front of them, barely resisted the blast wave. The guard was incredibly surprised, so I think everyone already guessed what really happened. The boy's eyes filled with joy and a glimmer of hope. He was ready to burst into tears of joy at any moment. After all, our hero arrived at the battle in an incredibly angry state. He was covered in fire and was ready to kill every member of Shu in revenge for his subordinates. Engulfed in flames, he leisurely walked through the courtyard, which was engulfed in a strong fire. Some of the people of the Shu family, seeing our hero, already knew what would happen next, so they tried to escape as quickly as possible. The servants began to rise to their feet, rejoicing at the arrival of their young master, smiles appearing on their faces. They gathered together and loudly declared that they were saved because the hero always comes last, right? Shu Sanli was unpleasantly surprised because no one should have found out about their plan, but our hero found out from somewhere and rushed to the rescue. The old man quickly realized and gave the order to retreat. All the members of the Shu family rushed away with frightened faces. Wu Shuang was incredibly angry, and creating more and more fire around himself, asked the question of how much the Shu loved to play with fire. Swinging his arms to the sides, flames formed around him and flew high into the sky. Dozens of fireballs levitated above the Shu family. Shu Sanli did not know such a technique and was very surprised, guessing what would happen next. Literally a moment later, these balls were already flying towards the villains who had caused the chaos. Elder Shu gave the command to start a general defense. Everyone had to try to avoid the attack. As the fireballs fall on the Xu family members, breaking through their defenses and setting everyone on fire, we learn the name of the technique: Fiery Limit, Fiery Lotus. The villains who came under attack instantly ignited. They were tormented by terrible pain from burns, and the flames still did not go out. They all asked their great elder for help, but he could not do anything. He was completely powerless. While he was doing what he was watching, one of his sons called out to him, which frightened Shu Sanli. Wu Shuang grabbed Shu Yuan by the throat and lifted him off the ground while he tearfully begged for help from his father, because he did not want to die. Our hero is disgusted to see such a person, but he asks him a question how he dares to be called one of the 7 young masters. Last time Zhang Yao died for him, who will be today? Shu Sanli began to panic and began to loudly pray that Wu Shuang would not kill his son. He tried to beg for his life. But he, without listening to him, decides to kill the guy by driving him into the ground in the literal sense of the word. After this, he immediately turns to Shu Sanli, saying that his son is the same as those servants. Someone raised him the same way, and they were also important to someone. While Wu Shuang continued to say that if you came to kill, be prepared to be killed, all the words went past the elder's ears. He could not calmly accept the death of his son. Raising his sword, he decides to attack our hero, even knowing that he has no chance. As expected, Wu Shuang easily catches Shu Sanli's hand, thereby stopping his unsuccessful attack. Turning to the guy, who by the way is called Six, he asks the question if this bastard cut off his hand. The answer was not long in coming, and in the end it was said that it was Elder Shu who was the culprit. Having accepted the answer, Wu Shuang pulled Shu Sanli by the hand closer to him. He desperately tried to resist, but it was all to no avail. With deft movements, he cuts all the old man's tendons, making him a complete invalid, incapable of anything. The cold gaze of our hero, penetrating to the depths of the soul. Looking at the villain defeated for the second time, he tells him to watch carefully as his sons leave this world. The remaining two sons, not knowing what to do, hid behind the old man, who was unlikely to be able to protect them. The servants watched everything and could not understand how their young master, who was bullied by everyone 4 years ago, could become such a strong master. An ignorant old man, wanting to protect the last blood of their family, decides to oppose our hero in an attempt to buy time to retreat. But in an instant, Wu Shuang was right in front of him, delivering a strong, crushing blow. Just one single moment and the old man suffered instant death, but if he is still alive, I will be shocked. Although there is an explosion, so thinking that most likely he is definitely dead, but not about that, our hero heads towards the escaped boys. Already jumping over the roof, Shuzhou tells Shu Ting not to turn around, but to just run as fast as he can. Wu Shuang won't let them escape, so he does a small squat in preparation for a charge. In a second, he is already several steps ahead, even though the guys tried to run with all their might. With a wave of his hand, our hero easily threw the two fugitives back into the courtyard. Shu Sanli could not move due to the cut tendons. The only thing he could do was watch his children suffer. Six, observing the whole situation, could not believe that such cruel and omnipotent people were trying to escape with their lives at the sight of his master. In the eyes of the servants, Wu Shuang's strength seemed simply incommensurable. The guardian quickly gave the order to clear the area and tie up all the surviving villains. All the servants began to quickly work to resolve the situation. The boy, in retaliation for himself, began to trample Shu Sanli with his foot, telling him to stop resisting. Lian Shan had finally come running to the residence. With his strength, the journey took a little longer than his son's. Everyone paid attention to him, and were very glad that their elder returned safe. Approaching him, they immediately began to apologize that they were able to protect their family, and without the help of the young master, they would have lost their ancestral home. But Lian Shan didn't care much. He considered them part of the family, and was deeply proud that they were able to face an enemy superior in strength without fear in their eyes. Outside the walls of the residence, the clatter of hooves was heard, and someone's horses were quickly approaching. The servants tensed, not knowing what to expect. There was also the thought that reinforcements had arrived from the Shu family. But Elder Qing said that everything is wrong, and most likely this is help. The first to enter were the people of the Hu clan. Their leader gave the order to put out the fire as quickly as possible and bandage the wounded. Everyone entering the yard began to provide first aid to the wounded, while others were busy putting out the fire. The servants were very surprised not only that the neighbors also came, but also the help from the Hu clan, because the Qing family had always been at odds with them. Wu Shuang, meanwhile, was lost in thought, blaming himself for the situation. In his opinion, if instead of thinking about his cultivation, he started training the servants, they would be able to fight back. There were quite a few wounded, but they tried to help everyone as quickly as possible. Our hero watched everything carefully. He continues to blame himself, saying that he continues to be complacent, and then he refers to himself by his old name, Wu Xinghe, adding that his past life taught him nothing. Meanwhile, his thoughts were interrupted by a scream. Wu Shuang's friends caught the merchant and did not know what to do with him. He begged for mercy, saying that he had information. Our hero did not expect to meet this man at such a moment, and he was interested in where he came from and what he had been doing all this time. After that terrible incident, the Qing family restored their home, and the Hu family helped them in this. The workers near the residence discussed the Qing, saying that they were disturbing. Also mentioned in the conversation was Wu Shuang, who managed to arrive on time and turn the situation around. No one could have expected that the Shu family would not only attack a noble family, but also commit treason. It's good that Gu Came Shen told them their plan. No one expected them to split into two groups. Despite the heavy losses among the Qing family, fortunately, no one died. and Wu Shuang was called monsters, because in less than a quarter of an hour he dealt with the entire Shu family. In the eyes of ordinary people, our hero, who turned such a situation in his favor, was such a strong warrior that he began to be considered the hope of the entire Baiwei kingdom. Now the small town located among the mountains will not be the same as before. Everything begins to change. Meanwhile, strange sounds were heard from their dungeons. I suggest you find out what is happening there. Merchant Go was on his knees. Shen, Wu Shuang sat in front of him with a blade smeared with poison and offered to try it on the old man, shaking with fear. What kind of poison is this? It's simple. From a tiny cut, the whole body will begin to shake. Foam will burst out of the mouth, endless convulsions for 3 days and 3 nights, and then death. Go Shen began to hit his forehead on the floor, starting to flatter our hero while simultaneously belittling himself. Phrases like not recognizing gold among jade flew out of his mouth. He swore to his life that he would be useful if only they didn't kill him. Extreme fear could be heard in his words. Wu Shuang decides to clarify whether the information that the Shu escaped at night to move to the great lands of Wu and betray the Baiwei kingdom is true, or whether it is all a lie. The old man swore that everything was completely true. Since the Shu were originally a small family from the wealthy class, they would not be able to escape to the great land of Wu so easily. Our hero looked at Gu Shina, assumed that someone was behind them. He, holding his head, began to say that he had no thoughts about this. Wu Shuang, standing up, began to emit a terrible aura, saying that since the merchant has no meaning, then he is not observed in his life either. Frightened, he began to shake and ask for a chance to give him a little more time to think. Having said that he doesn't have much time, our hero gives the old man one more chance to improve. His next words were that he remembers how during the evaluation of the families, the Ximen feudal lord stayed in the Shu residence, but he does not know why. Once Wu Shuang showed a little more of his energy, Gu Shen immediately remembered that it was the Ximen feudal lords who suggested that the Shu family escape to the great lands of Wu. Our hero, after answering, did not stop in search of information, and having mentioned that Simon was one of the 12 feudal lords, they could not but have a motive to make such an offer to Zuyam. The old man understood that his life would depend on the answer, so he had no choice but to betray the Simon family and end this conversation. He began to tell that it was the Ximen feudal lords who decided to betray the kingdom of Baiwei, and through Shu, they began to implement the plan. Both Baiwei and Wu, both kingdoms are at an average level and are not very different. Wu Shuang continued to listen that most likely the Ximen feudal lords secretly agreed with the royal family of the great land of Wu to operate within the country. If they succeeded, the great lands of Wu would be able to expand their territories, increase their natural reserves and grow to a high level, and Ximen would be crowned as a foreign royal family. Having finished giving out absolutely all the information to Go Shen, closing his eyes, waited for our hero's decision whether to live or die. Wu Shuang smiled and mentally praised the old man, saying that quite a lot of useful information poured out of his mouth. He decides to spare his life for his behavior. At the moment, the Qing family is not short of people, but there is a lack of an obedient dog. Our hero invites him to think things over. Will he work for them? If so, will he live in luxury? And if he decides to betray the Qing, his entire family will die. Go Shen has never seen a child with such an attitude and character, who would care about the Ximen family when such things are happening here. In the eyes of the old merchant, our hero showed himself not just as a person, but as a man of high aspirations. A little while later, Go Shen became a dog in good faith. Although he didn't bite, he had fighting abilities. The news that the Shu family had betrayed the Baiwei kingdom instantly spread to all possible places, and officials from Luojiang province immediately headed to the Qing family's house in order to detain the criminals. About 32 people went on a campaign against the Qing family, and more than 20 of them died. They also found letters addressed to one family by a feudal lord from the great lands of Wu, and in addition to them, an escape plan was found. Siege of the House of Qing, a deliberate attack on the nobles of the Baiwei kingdom. All of Shu's men were caught and shackled. After collecting all the evidence, the news reached the emperor. Ordinary crimes are solved by civil servants, but treason is a completely different matter. The emperor was simply furious after such news, so he gave the order to execute everyone without delay. The emperor also sent investigators to the royal lands of the Redwoods. He demanded a brutal investigation into everything that had a connection with Shu. Overall, no innocent people were harmed during the investigation. After such a story, events moved to the Qing family's training ground, where people have already gathered. Six can be seen showing off his restored hand to Guardian Chuan. The guard said it was all thanks to their young master's treatment. Wu Shuang came onto the stage. All the servants were wondering why the young master had gathered them all. During treatment, our hero noticed that all the servants had a decent level of physical abilities, but their martial arts were weak, so it was decided to improve them. He addressed all the guards, asking what their duties were. Everyone loudly answered that their main task was to protect their family at the cost of their own lives, which they demonstrated in the last battle. But Wu Shuang said that their answer was incorrect, because the duty of the guards, firstly, is to protect themselves. If they cannot even protect themselves, how will they protect the house? Although everyone remained silent, everyone found meaning in our hero's words, because they understood that without protecting themselves, they would not be able to protect the house, which again happened before the rescuer arrived. He loudly declares that all the guards are children of the Qing family, and no one will doubt their loyalty, but loyalty and courage alone will not be enough to defeat the enemy. During a real fight, strength and strategy are important, so starting tomorrow, Wu Shuang is going to personally conduct special training for 3 months. Everyone believed that if they were trained by the young master himself, they would be able to become stronger. Our hero also announced that the training would not be easy, and everyone who wanted to leave could do so exactly at this moment. None of the guards came to leave. On the contrary, they all unanimously said that they would not surrender. This answer suited our hero, and he said the last words so that everyone would remember that after those 3 months, their destinies would change. Next, we are shown how Wu Shuang is already standing on the balcony, and next to him is Gu Shen. He reported that he had fulfilled our hero's request by spreading rumors, so that no one would know that the request was from him. Also, Wu Shuang told Gu Shen should stop saying that he is of a lower rank, because all that is required of him is submission. He needs people who can solve problems, not talk nicely. The old man was incredibly happy to hear that he was again called a man, in contrast to the previous title of a dog. He immediately asks why, having evidence of the Heman feudal lords working together with the Shu family during the assessment of families, not use it in order to cause more trouble. Wu Shuang replies that his words alone will not be enough to defeat the Simons outright. Go Shen suggests that our hero does not want to get involved with the Zeman feudal lords. But if so, then why did he want to spread rumors? According to the old man, they do not harm them. It turns out that Wu Shuang is waiting for an opportunity, and rumors will help him protect the feudal lords from further actions directed towards the Qing family. He believes that if it weren't for the rumors, they would most likely have been attacked long ago. Go Shen listened attentively, amazed at the intelligence of his new master. They were distracted from the conversation by Shu Er, who called our hero. There was a forced smile on her face. Over the past few days, Wu Shuang had become accustomed to the fact that such an expression did not bring anything good. He thought that most likely they had come to get married again. Lately, suitors have been pestering me like this. About a dozen of these come a day. But to his surprise, it was Shu Er who said that it was the girl who came, and besides, she came specifically to him. If you look from the back, she looks like the beauty whom our hero promised to repay for information. The continent of Tianxian, the countries on it are divided into 12 classes. The first class is occupied by the Great Empire, which is divided into high, middle, and low levels. The second class is free countries, which are also divided into 3 corresponding levels. The third class is subordinate countries, also divided into 3 levels. At the very bottom of the list are slave countries and various tribes, all the same 3 levels. 4 classes, 12 levels. Among this entire list, the Buyue Kingdom is only a middle-level subordinate country of the lowest status. Let's finish with a little background history of the hierarchy and return to the events in the Qing residence. Wu Shuang recognized the girl who came to him. She looked at him, saying that she thought they would tell her to drive away, since the desired goal had been achieved. Our hero thanked the girl, because thanks to her information, his family was able to avoid evil fate. As they say, a favor for a service. He is ready to repay her if it is in his power. She suggests getting straight to the point. Few people know about her next words, and those who know keep them secret. So the girl asks Wu Shuang to keep the secret. According to her, in 3 months, the 4 heads of the Buyue Kingdom will judge the National Student Martial Arts exam. But do not underestimate it, because it is much more difficult than a regular test. He is also an opportunity. In the past, such examinations were held in the territory of the Buyue Kingdom. Those who passed it went to the sacred land of Zhenwu to study. This time, the location of the exam will be a place far beyond the Buyue Kingdom. It will be in the mother country of Buyue. The mother country of Buyue is a mid-tier great empire. It ranks second in class and has a huge number of noble families. Buyue Kingdom is only responsible for selecting young talents for the exam. If the participants perform well and their number is sufficient, the kingdom will be able to receive advanced training. What about the students? They have an incredible future ahead of them if they make it through the qualifying rounds. Such chosen ones will have a chance to enter the world of spirits. Wu Shuang has already heard about the spirit world, but he doesn't really understand what kind of place it is. In his opinion, the spirit world here is about the same as the highest level of martial arts in his world. And then the girl gets to the point. Her sister is going to take part in the exam, and she would like our hero to help her during the exam. If this was considered a normal exam, then he would be able to help, but her sister's skills had not reached a certain level. What if he helps her achieve him? Will it come back to haunt her later? The girl said that there was no need to worry. If he wanted to help, then his presence at the exam would be very useful. Wu Shuang agrees to help. She thanked him with all her heart. Our hero, having said that a favor for a favor, remembers what is there and does not know her name. The girl introduced herself with a sweet smile. Her name is Tong Yao. The conversation ended, and our hero began 3 months of training. The city of Donglin is located next to the Great Mount Sang, and he and his warriors used it in their training. Qing Wu Shuang taught absolutely everyone cultivation. 3 months of training could turn an ordinary bunch of fighters into an iron army, training in strength, spirit, internal energy, and mind power, all of which the Qing guards went through. During his training, Wu Shuang did not sit idle. He reached an ideal level in the sun power technique. In this world, it is much easier for him to raise his level, so he was quickly able to cultivate the power of the sun to perfection. The path of the sun's power is to concentrate all the internal energy of qi within oneself. Once the whirlpool is fully assembled, the sun's power reaches its ideal level. Wu Shuang uses the sun power technique, Holy Destruction. This technique is stronger than the past 9, and is already quite close to the peak of the previous life. Now our hero is confident that he can defeat even the elder Simon. His goal is the highest level of martial arts, which he was unable to achieve in his previous life. The 6th of June has arrived, a significant day on which Wu Shuang sets out on his journey. The father gives his son instructions, and also asks him to be careful, because his path will lie through the lands of the feudal Lord Simon. Fortunately for our hero, this is not scary at all. Lian Shan wishes him to pass the exam and take away the opportunity to enter the world of spirits, since many of the Qings tried to do this, but no one could. Since everything is so serious, Wu Shuang makes a promise to do everything in his power. After a short farewell, he saddled his horse and set off. Luojiang Province. There were only 4 fighters under 20 years of age: Daxi Yang, Yun Qingyun, Shu Ting, and Qing Wu Shuang. The Shus are off the list. Accordingly, only 3 people had the right to participate in the exam. After a short period of time, they arrived at their first destination. This city was truly beautiful. It is much larger than in Luojiang Province. Daxi Yan suggested going to the center since all the participants should gather there. Everywhere there were high-quality students from the 8 provinces of the transcendental country. Everyone was divided into their groups. Suddenly, an impudent girl flies into the crowd on a horse, knocking down several people. It was Yin Yue Hong from the Yin Yue family. She's a martial arts student of the 8th level of true power. Just as the victim wanted to say something, she couldn't say anything when she saw who was in front of her. Yin Yue Hong, accusing the girl of brazenly stopping her horse, hit her hard with a whip. Little Yun immediately began to get angry, asking who she was to act so brazenly. Wu Shuang overheard the guys standing nearby who recognized her. He found out who she was, and also that the Simon family was behind her. Yun Qingyun said loudly that that girl's behavior was wrong. She brutally beats an ordinary passerby, which is considered disgusting. The hooligan, glancing towards little Yun, told her to shut up, otherwise she would blame herself. But Qingyun did not plan to retreat and continued to insult Yingya Yue Hong, saying that everyone here was high-class fighters and she had no right to bully them. She also mentioned that her unreasonable conflicts are more like jokes, and in general she looks disgusting. Wu Shuang did not expect that she would seek justice in such a place. He was pleasantly surprised. All the students standing around completely ignored all the words because they were afraid of the influence of the Emeil family. Hong told our little girl to stop embarrassing herself because everyone else has no opinion on this matter. Mentally, she said that no one would dare to oppose her, because the Ying Yue family was friends with the Shimen feudal lords. Yun Qingyun didn't know what to answer this time, so she stood there thoughtfully. Suddenly, Wu Shuang stepped forward and said that he could help shut up Yin Yue Hong's unceasing mouth. Daxi Yan came out after him and said that she had no place in the exam. She began to get angry, not understanding how someone from the provinces dared speak out against her. Our hero confidently said that there was no point in being afraid, because in his eyes she was nothing more than a flea that he could kill by simply touching her. The impudent girl's eyes were filled with anger. No one had dared to insult her like that for a long time. She wanted Wu Shuang to pay for her words and tried to strike with her long whip. The whip was already in front of our hero's face, but smiling, he did not move a single step. His gaze was full of self-confidence. At the last moment, he easily grabbed the whip with his bare hand, which the insolent hooligan clearly did not expect. Pulling it, Wu Shuang threw Yin Yue Hong off the saddle without any problem, and she fell to the ground. The crowd of martial arts students opened their mouths in surprise. No one had dared to confront that rowdy girl before. While our hero was holding the whip in his hands, the crowd gradually perked up and began shouting that most likely the guy, that is our hero, was destined to live, since he had done such an act. To be continued. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. Dabo recap with love.